Hello, this is Greg House on Green Greg's coming to you on the second day of February 22. Top days 2/2/22. Time on deck 1400 hours Central Standard Time. And I got a special guest tonight, John Hollerman. Now, I've had John Hollerman on this channel before. He's a very excellent expert and has been real popular. Jonathan Hollerman is a former military seer, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape instructor with the U.S. Air Force. He is also author of a #1 best-selling book, Survival Theory, a Preparedness Guide, a member of the Joint Services Electromagnetic Defense Task Force, a top 10 bestseller author of 3 survival fiction novels, and is the president of Grid Down Consultant. This guy brings some firepower to this topic, and he's going to talk about things tonight that's going to shock your pants off, because we've been told we don't have boots on the ground. Well, we got cyber boots on the ground. And I'm going to tell you something, guys, that's just as bad. We are on the verge of times that are way too interesting, and he's going to go all into that. And guys, I bring you this as part of my eyes wide open and head on a swivel video series, because you need to know what's going on. It's a proposition my channel to help you survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive. And I do bring a lot of these videos. And I include also things like how to garden, which is a skill you're going to need to have when the grid goes down. And you better pay attention to my videos on eating free from the weeds and the trees with wild edibles and medicinals. And right now I've got so you need to subscribe to my channel and bang the update notification bell and click off. And by the way, I got a really good special running right now. It's better than it was. We got right now $50 off a 1 month supply, which is 2 of these buckets of this food that lasts 25 years, and you get 2,000 calories a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And John Hollerman himself will tell you why that's a special deal with 2,000 calories a day over the 800 that's typical by other vendors. So like I tell you, 2,000 calories a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, $50 off for a 1 month supply, and you get $150 off a 3 month supply. Guys, that is an awesome deal. Check it out. Go to prepwithgreg.com, prepwithgreg.com, and you can go in and check the My Patriot Supply logo at the top of the page and go into all kind of other deals with prep and supplies. So check that out. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get on with this tonight because we got to rock and roll. This is an interesting topic. I've got one of the best speakers I could bring you on this topic, and he is going to rock your socks off. We're about to bring some brand new breaking information here that you're not aware of, and it's going to really make you know that you've got to get ready right now. Jonathan, tell us about it. What is the news? What is cooking right now?
Well, what's cooking is we've been warning about the threat of a grid down scenario in this country for years. I noticed you had Dr. Peter Pry and General Ken Chrosniak on here in the not too recent past. Both excellent sources of information. If you didn't get a chance to watch those videos on Greg's channel, make sure you check those out. Those are 2 of the tip of the spears in this. So we've been warning about this for a long time, but I've never seen us closer to an all-out cyber war than we are right now. And the American people have no idea that it's how close we are and how dangerous it is and how much it'll affect them personally. Right now, the media is covering the Ukraine story as something that's happening over there. You know, it's over there, but this is turning out to be something that could affect you in your home tomorrow or next week or next month when the Russians do decide to go into Ukraine. So I wanted to lay a little groundwork. I asked Greg, I think he'll post the link down below here after we're done recording here. I put together a cyber report on the current situation in Ukraine and Russia on my website. You can download it for free. So basically what's going on is you've got Russia. If you've been sleeping under a rock and you haven't been listening to Greg the last couple of weeks, Russia has amassed over 100,000 troops and tanks and all kinds of military hardware on the border of Ukraine. They're looking at annexing the Ukrainian territory for one reason or another. We won't get into the geopolitical situation there, but what you basically have is Ukraine has no chance in a ground war against Russia. I mean, nobody denies this fact. Ukraine, I mean, they could fight a guerrilla war, but that's just going to be a long, bloody, drawn out, you know, it's not going to be decisive in any manner. So nobody estimates Ukraine is going to be able to stop Russia from taking over the country. Now, one of the things people don't realize is warfare has changed in the past decade. The past wars were fought with tanks and aircraft carriers, and the fastest plane wins the battle. The future of war is going to be fought in the electromagnetic spectrum. Future World War III will be fought with critical infrastructure and with cyber attacks, EMP, and attacks against critical infrastructures in each other's countries. Because if you can black out, blind, and silence your enemy, it makes it a whole lot easier to take that country. So it is in Russia's war doctrine. They've already blacked out Ukraine, their capital city, Kiev, twice in the past. Most of Ukraine's infrastructure, electric grid and pipeline infrastructure was built by Russia with Russian parts. So before they put a boot on the ground in Ukraine, they will hit them with massive cyber attacks. They already hit them with one about a week ago. It was just a propaganda thing. They took over government computers and just blacked out their screens and said, be very afraid, basically letting them know they're coming. So that is the future warfare. That is what will happen if Russia decides to go into Ukraine. They will go in with a cyber attack first. That's a given, okay? So here's the deal. Ukraine can't defend itself. What Ukraine does have is they've got the 5th largest cyber hacking army in the world, okay? And when Russia decides to invade, Ukraine will respond with cyber. So let me give a couple quotes from just this past week. A Ukrainian cyber attack against Russian infrastructure isn't just mere speculation, right? An intelligence official in Brussels commented about Ukraine's cyber abilities. He said, in quote, "In Russia, what do you want turned off? How hard do you think it would be for the world's best hackers backed by a major state? That's us. I'll get to that in a minute. To wreck Russia's cyber infrastructure, black everything out, and get people killed in accidents." So what he's talking about is the ability of the Ukrainians to attack the Russian homeland, black out Moscow and states, and blow up pipelines and destroy infrastructure that gets people killed, essentially. And the major state he's alluding to there, that's the United States. Guess what? You can go online right now and find out that the Biden administration 3 weeks ago sent U.S. cyber warfare teams to Ukraine, not from here. They sent them to Ukraine to help with the Ukrainian cyber forces there. So we literally have United States cyber warfare guys assisting Ukraine. So here's what happens. Russia goes in, they black out parts of Ukraine. Ukraine cyber warfare teams are going to respond. Last week, a Ukrainian intelligence official who works in cyber activities in that country stated, quote, "There's always endless kinetic activity between Ukraine and Russia. It's an ongoing battlefield. So if the ground war escalates, we will escalate in cyber, but so will the Russians. But we think we can hurt them in ways they don't even understand." So what happens when all of a sudden Putin moves forward, Ukraine starts, taking out critical infrastructure in the Russian homeland? Who do you think Putin's going to blame for that with the U.S. cyber warfare teams in that state? Not to mention, and I think it was January 19th press conference, Biden even hinted at the fact that we would attack Russian infrastructure directly if they invaded Ukraine, that was on the table, cyber attacks in the Russian homeland. So to say some of the talking heads, the cyber guys, or some of the security analysts that CNN and these guys have on, I heard one of them the other day being like, "Oh, the Putin would never, they would never attack the American homeland." Well, if their country is getting attacked and it's U.S. cyber warfare teams in coordination with Ukrainian cyber warfare teams, it doesn't matter who pushes the final button. If our guys are sitting in the cubicle next to the guy pushing the buttons, we're going to get blamed. Okay. And so last year, Margaret Simonian, and I'm probably butchering that, she's very close advisor to Putin, considered to be the propaganda mouthpiece for him. She warned that Russia's annexing of the Ukraine would lead to a war of infrastructures with the U.S., including denial of internet access, shutting off power grids, and an all-out cyber offensive against U.S. critical infrastructure. She said, quote, I do not believe that this will be a large-scale hot war with the US like World War II. And I do not believe that there will be a long Cold War. It will be a war of the third type, the cyber war. In a conventional war, we could defeat Ukraine in 2 days, but it will be another kind of war, and we'll do it. And then the US will respond by turning off power to the Russian city of Voronezh. And she goes on to postulate that Moscow would then respond with a flip of a switch, blacking out the state of Florida or New York's Harlem district. And she insinuated that American military analysts and specialists are incompetent and stupid regarding the subject, and that Russia could easily defeat the US in cyber war. And which is so true, because their infrastructure, their electric grid infrastructure is built with vacuum tubes from the 1970s. Ours is built with microchips. The Biden administration is literally threatening to escalate cyber war with Russia. And it's a war that the US absolutely cannot hope to defend. And to think that this isn't happening behind the scenes, DHS 6 days ago released a statement, got a little bit of press error, but not a lot. And they were warning some of the critical infrastructure guys. And so this is an official DHS statement. It says, we assess that Russia would consider initiating a cyber attack against the homeland, US homeland, if it perceived a US or NATO response to a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine threatened its long-term national security, and that Russia's threshold for conducting disruptive or destructive cyber attacks in the US homeland probably remains very high. We know they've been in our grid for decades. I mean, they've been infiltrating our grid with malware for decades. So the million-dollar question then goes, how far will this go? Okay, so Russia's probably going to go into Ukraine. I'm not a prophet, but it sure looks that way. When he does, he's going to black out Ukraine. Ukraine's going to hit Russia back. That's the only response they really have. They can't do it with their small army. And we're going to catch the blame. And Russia's already said, their propaganda outlets have already said that we're underestimating Putin here hugely. Our country, this administration, they're trying to talk tough. Putin ain't playing. I don't know, Greg, if you saw Putin's speech or his press conference here, was it yesterday or the day before? He's ticked. He ain't playing around. And to be honest with you, I'm no communist. I'm red, white, and blue, red-blooded American. But he makes a few good points about us putting our missiles on the edge of his country. And he makes the point that, like, hey, if Mexico was our ally, we started putting, quote, missile defenses right on your Texas border, you wouldn't stand for it either, right? So, you have Peter Pry on. I didn't get a chance to watch your interview with him. I had him on my show here a week and a half ago. Peter's been saying for a long time that we need to bring Russia into the fold and play nice with them, and kind of give in to some of these demands they have, and try and become allies with them, because this thing that we're doing with Russia, all we are doing is pushing them into the arms of China. Russia and China are playing buddy-buddy for the last year. They've been doing war exercises together, communication exercises together. They're doing a space program together. China announced last week that if we put economic sanctions on Russia, China will help offer them supplies and ease their sanctions. So this is a really dangerous situation that we're in right now. And, people are saying that this could happen at any time. Basically at any point, Putin could make these moves. And within a very short period of time, this thing could escalate, and we could see cities and possibly even states in this country blacked out. And then the question is, how does Biden respond? Does he escalate and black out more of their country or hit more of their infrastructure? This cyber war escalation, Dr. Peter Pry mentioned, Russia considers nuclear EMP in the cyber domain. They do not consider that as part of their nuclear doctrine. That's part of their cyber doctrine. And now it is the top echelon of cyber. But if this goes tit for tat and escalates, it is not, hard to say that Putin at some point could hit us with an EMP if it starts escalating and getting very, very serious. So we're living in very dangerous times. And a lot of people just don't understand the threat.
Let's expand on that point a little bit there, John, because yeah, an EMP is generated by a nuclear device, but it doesn't explode directly in the country. It explodes over the country, miles above it in space, and that you don't get the blast effects on the ground. What you get is that electromagnetic storm that would fry the grids across the country. So for that reason, that's why they consider it in their electronic attack domain as part of cyber warfare and not nuclear warfare. It's because they're not directly hitting the cities, but the long-term effects are as bad as a nuclear attack. The worst thing about a nuclear attack would be that they'd EMP us before they launched the missiles anyway. You might consider the missiles to be the mercy end of putting people out of the misery before they all starve to death. That's a terrible thing to say, and I don't mean it that way. Don't take it that's what I think about it. But it's been projected that 9 out of 10 people would die of societal collapse immediately following an EMP within the course of a year. Now, and that I posit that is a optimistic assessment because farmers are not growing enough food to feed themselves. They're market farmers today. They don't have gardens on most farms, and those that do are going to town and buying their stuff. That's why I did a video talking about, grid down gardening. That's why I emphasize this stuff, because you got to be able to know how to do these things without the aid of stores that are out there today. And a lot of people don't get that, but I'm trying to get that message out. But so what that is that if we get an EMP attack like that, for one, I don't know what we're going to have that we can respond with after that, because so much of our command and control structure was built to the old hardening standard of 50,000 volts per meter. And you're talking about EMP super weapons of 200,000 volts per meter. And they would probably hit us more than one. And as Dr. Pry has long taught us, it would be a multi-pronged attack if they hit us. There would be cyber attacks, which would probably start first, and they would just drill in and do more of those. It'd be the EMP attacks, and it would be direct kinetic attacks against power stations themselves. And of course, Russia has an ally in all of this, of China. It just so happens to be the vendor that we're buying a lot of our grid components from. And guess what they got in them? The grid components that we're buying from China have cell phone components built into them that can report back to home and to China the status of our grid, and perhaps even have their own off switches or switches that would cause things to be overloaded and burn out. So that's the biggest risk, is that they would switch things to overload those extra high voltage transformers, which, if all things were working in good working order, would take 18 months to get on your loading dock after you put in the rec for it. But you'll have no means to put in a rec for it anyway, because the infrastructure that we use to do all that will be fried. And by the time you got it, there'd be nobody to put it together, because 9 out of 10 or more, as I would suggest, people will no longer be with us. And we already are seeing what a little bit of a labor shortage is wrecking our system today. Just, there won't be anything then. The people that will be left to be trying to take care of mom and kids at home. This is a Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall. We're not going to be putting it back together again in any way that we recognize in our lifetimes. It's going to be catastrophic if we get in this situation. And we're just on the very cusp of it. What do you say to that, John?
Oh, what do I say to that? I say that I couldn't have postulated it or phrased it more perfectly. Verbatim, the exact same information that I've been, and Peter Pry and Michael Mabey and Tommy Waller and General Chrosniak and General Quast and the electromagnetic, all these organizations, we've been saying the same stuff for a decade, and nobody in the media is listening, and nobody in the either side of Congress are listening or doing anything about it. So a couple points. You mentioned the EMP attack. So a lot of the, the white tie Harvard grad analysts are going to say, oh, they'll never do that because it's nuclear war. They do not consider that nuclear war because it doesn't kill a single person on the ground. You detonate at 300 kilometers in the air. The other issue with it is attribution. They're probably not going to launch an EMP attack from some intercontinental ballistic missile from the 70s where we get to watch it come at us for 4 or 5 minutes. It's going to come out of a sub in the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to come off a shipping container in the Gulf of Mexico. They probably have K-Club launchers in our country as we speak. If you don't know what that is, take a look at it. And so what happens is when that nuclear weapon goes off up in the sky, there's no way to prove who did it, because if you detonate a nuclear weapon on the ground, right after that settles, you can get the little guys in the green suits go out there and sift some dirt. They put it in a machine that tells you exactly what country it came from. You can't do that if you detonate it up in the atmosphere. So there is no guarantee of who did it. And then the next question is, well, yes, they just hit us with an EMP and we go to NATO. Well, they just, hit us with an EMP. Well, we want to hit them with a regular nuke, right? And they're going to be like, well, did it kill anybody? You don't have any dead people. So the idea of moving from EMP to nuclear is different, right? And that's something that all these other countries in their war doctrine, EMP Commission back 2017 put out foreign views and basically foreign war doctrine views on EMP use. In Iran, it's considered Sharia compliant because it doesn't kill anybody. All these countries, it is considered a first strike weapon, and it is considered a cyber warfare technique, not nuclear. So it is more likely to be used than all-out nuclear war. So the whole 50 missiles passing each other in the sky and blowing up and putting a nuclear ring around the world where everybody dies. Excuse me. I don't, mutually assured destruction, I think, will prevent that, but it is going to be, like Putin's mouthpiece said, it's going to be a war of infrastructures. And then that brings to the next point is, you threw out the fact that 80 to 90% of Americans will die. You throw that number out and people's, I literally watch people's eyes roll into the back of their head and they don't get it. They don't understand that number. That just seems like such a huge number. They don't understand. 80 or 90% of people die within the first year. You have no resources, no heat, no AC, no phones, no banking, no TV, no radio. Nobody knows what's happening. The United States military is 99% reliant on a civilian electric grid. They are 100%, other than the nuclear triad, they're 100% reliant on the civilian communications networks. There's no backup plan in the military. I was part of the wargaming efforts with the military on this. There is no plan for an EMP. There's no government plan for an EMP. There's no interstate trucking. There's no computers. Your grocery stores, when they're cleaned out in 3 days, are empty. If it is an EMP, your tractors don't work. A lot of your cars don't work. Everything's broken. It's a continental time machine, and it takes us back to like the 1800s. And we do not have the life skills to live without electricity today, period. The people do not have the life skills. Even if you take up gardening today, it's going to take you some time to work through the kinks. It's going to take you a few years to figure out, how to deal with powdery mildew or Japanese beetles, and especially when you can't run to the nursery and get pesticides or herbicides to deal with that stuff. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. And I would say the next thing, we can move on to, and me and Greg have been joking around doing a show on prepper misinformation. But the next side of that is that, all these people, they don't understand the psychology of human desperation and starvation in this situation. So most of the preparedness experts that you see on YouTube, they've never starved a day in their life. They've never been to a third world country. They don't understand what's going to happen. Everybody's looking at the situation with their normalcy bias, and they expect everybody in their little mag groups or their neighborhood, everybody's going to act how they're acting today going into the future. Well, we're going to barter, we'll become friends, we'll take security, all that. Yeah, that stuff may work for the first week or two, but as soon as people really start starving, I don't mean like missing a day, but I'm talking about missing a week without a meal. And it's not even so much you, it's your kid. You're a father and you got a 6-year-old kid that you haven't been able to provide food for a week, and they're gray and they're gaunt and they're laying on the couch. They have no energy. They could die soon. What wouldn't you do for food? So this idea that everybody's going to hold hands, sing kumbaya, and, walk through this thing together is never going to happen. It may work for a week or two. And there's a lot of preppers that are stocking up a heck of a lot of food in cities and suburbia, I got myself covered. I got my generator. Like, nobody's going to hear that. I'm going to garden in my backyard. Like, none of your neighbors are going to figure that out. you know, and I'm going to sit here and eat my food that's in my basement, and nobody else is going to figure out that I'm the only one on the block not getting freaking skinny. You know what I mean? So there's just a lot of concepts. So one thing I want to preface, you know, I'm sure you got questions, and you know, we'll kind of go back and forth here, and you know, see where this all leads. But I'm a one-trick pony. Okay, my company, Grid Down Consulting, my motto is prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and let God do the rest. Okay, prepare for the worst. The worst case scenario in this country is a nationwide blackout, and it's also a very likely scenario, highly more likely than nuclear war or bioterror or some of these other things, which are all realistic things as well. But when we're talking here today and we're talking about prep misinformation, I'm coming at this from the worst case scenario of a nationwide grid blackout, no services, no resupply, you're on your own. It's kind of every man for themselves. So if you're into preparedness and you know you live in Florida and you're prepping for a hurricane, okay, the information that I'm going to be imparting, the stuff that we're going to be talking about isn't relevant to that situation. So the first thing I would say is, what type of prepping are we talking about? So the stuff that we're going to talk about in this show today is going to be for the worst case scenario where kind of society falls apart and the grid goes down.
Yeah, now a lot of people got a lot of conceptions and preceptions about grid going down and EMPs and all that. You can bet for redundancy's sake, if they launch an EMP attack on us, they'll be launching more than one weapon. But some in the chat room have suggested that EMP would only work for 300 miles. It's really line of sight, and the line of sight goes a long way from 300 kilometers up. I know I've put balloons to 20 miles up in the atmosphere, and we could communicate with a radius of 400 miles or greater easily. So that's the higher you get with any antenna, the farther the broadcast reach. Now you do have inverse square law with the signal strength, but this is coupled with a magnetic field also, and it has more impact at higher latitudes than it does at lower latitudes, as the magnetic field lines are more compressed at higher latitudes. They had impacts from Starfish Prime in Hawaii, which is way down in the latitude scale. After we did the Starfish Prime explosions in space, launched from a Redstone rocket, you know, back decades ago when I was a little kid in the 60s, early 60s. So, in fact, some of the Soviet experiments did have, that they didn't intend for to have EMP effects from, really tore up a lot of equipment in their systems. And what a lot of people don't realize, a lot of the current comes up from the ground. So there have been estimates showing field strengths over the area, and indeed, it looks like you could take out everything. A lot of Canada, north of the United States, and even stuff down in Mexico.
Yeah, that is that's the whole point of it being 300 kilometers in the sky, and that is the magic number, because if you get it over the center of the country at 300 kilometers, you can hit coast to coast. You can take down the entire country. So here's the other thing you got to realize is, even if it didn't get quite coast to coast, we've got 3 electric grids in this country. It's going to travel down those lines anyway. So you can hit all 3 grids with one. And I do agree with Peter Pry. If they hit us with one, they're probably going to hit us with 2 or 3. They're probably going to hit us on the East Coast and the West Coast at the same time, or shortly one after the other. But yeah, they absolutely can punch us in the mouth with this.
Well, they have the EMP Super Weapons now, which you can put out 200,000 volts per meter, which is more than we expected. What they do is they don't have all the shielding. These are actually smaller nukes. They're not shielded as densely as the typical nukes. It's the shielding that blocks the gamma rays. It's the gamma rays that strip the electrons in the atmosphere and cause the EMP effects. You know, you get the E1, E2, and E3 effects of electromagnetic pulse that you'd be getting. The E1 is a short wave that fry your small electronics. The E2 is like lightning, and E3 is the longer wave components that get picked up on power lines. They get picked up in pipelines and rail lines. Any very long conductors will pick up the E3. And the E3 is similar to what you would get with a solar coronal mass ejection, by the way. So this is kind of like a CME added with shortwave and lightning type components to it. So yeah, an EMP is considered to be the worst case scenario of these kind of events, whether solar or the high altitude EMP. Hemp is also what it's called, not for the weed, by the way. This is
Tad,
go ahead.
Yeah, to add to your point, because that, again, very common prepper misconception is the whole EMP thing, right? So everybody, even big companies, including the electric utility industries, are still look at Mil Standard 188-125 as the gold standard. And it does offer protection. So I'm not going to say that, but 188-125 was written in 1981. And that was based on an off-the-shelf nuclear weapon that was not specifically designed for maximum gamma radiation, right? And so what happened is in 2004, the Russians, Senator Roscoe Bartlett he was with the, I think was with the Intelligence Committee at the time, was meeting with the Russians behind they were having some discussions behind closed doors. And one of the military generals says, they were talking about, I forget how the conversation went, but basically the general said, yeah, nuclear war is kind of off the table for us. We don't need nukes anymore. We have EMP weapons that can take out even your most hardened your most military hardened defenses, right? And through, probably cyber espionage, we ended up discovering that they have designed smaller, like you mentioned, smaller EMP weapons that are designed, like you said, with less shielding, and they're shaped in a way where it forces all the energy straight down back towards the earth. And 200 kilovolts per meter is the estimates that we have. So because of that information, if you remember, during Barack Obama's term, he, who's not a war hawk, spent over $4 billion rehardening Cheyenne. We spent hundreds of millions of dollars rehardening our aircraft carriers and a bunch of other military major hardware. We didn't harden any of the bases. I mean, we didn't get that expensive or that, but our nuclear triad, we did bolster our defenses. So 180-125 is what everybody talks about. It's a 60-year-old document. There is actually another, and I don't remember it off the top of my head. They rewrote the EMP hardening strategy and methods after 2004. That document is a TS2 level document. Nobody really has access to it. It's on a need to know basis. But this idea that you can just throw your stuff in a trash can and metal trash can, so I use that as an example. Prepper misinformation. You've got a YouTube video with 450,000 hits, and I think it's Mormon Prepper or something, right? 450,000 hits. I mean, complete with a weed whacker in the background and a guy telling everybody how you can EMP protect all your electronics using just an off-the-shelf metal trash can. And his test was to take a radio and put a radio in there. When he put the lid on, the static came out, right? That was his big test to prove that it's EMP proof. It's like, that's not how it works. It's not how any of this works, So, but that thing's got 450,000 views. I mean, I see videos all the time on EMP. I want to be careful what I say because there's big companies out there and I don't want to get sued, but there's all kinds of devices people are hawking for EMP protection. Okay. And when I brought it up at the EDTF, some of the top engineers from White Sands and some of the big military EMP testing facilities, when I talked to them about these different strategies and devices, they literally laughed. They're like, that's not going to work. You know what I mean? But
I know exactly what you mean. Everybody's asking about some of those devices all the time.
I get emailed 3 times a week on it.
You and I are both longtime members of the EMP, various EMP committees. I don't know anyone in any of these committees who've been foolish enough to buy that junk.
Well, I actually do, because so this company, to be unnamed, claims that they have they're approved by the military, or so I forget how everything's specifically phrased in certain ways. And when I went and researched that document, it's a DHS document for inline filtration, which I agree, it will work for E3. It'll work against, if they call this device solar flare shield, I'd be like, boom, yeah, good to go. But it will work against E3. But so that's what the military paper said it was good for, but they're saying it's good for all this. Anyways, I don't want to get too in depth on that. You gotta be careful who you're listening to.
I'll take an issue with that even on E3, because most of your E3 signals will come up through the ground. And what this thing does is it shunts your power to the ground. So it's
Yeah.
not if you back the other way around.
6 months ago, there was a major report, and I forget who it was, but it was a geological group that, deal with like rocks in the ground and how the EMP blast will get magnified based on different shale layers in the ground. So that's something that even the people that have been testing the effects of EMP in this country didn't take into consideration is the magnetic, you're the NASA guy, I forget what it's called, but the magnetic resonance in the ground, it's magnified with these different rock layers, and it's going to magnify the E3 portion of the EMP. So there's new stuff coming out all the time, and it's just making it look worse and worse.
Crazy thing is it's going to happen more. The population centers are heavier. Northeast will be hit particularly hard by that, by the way. So all these guys up in the Washington to Boston metro complex are going to be, and that entire region is going to be hit especially hard by an effect like that. So yeah, this is not a funny thing, guys. We're in serious territory here with these things, and you still also got to account for voltage division with the use of any device like this. Too bad they're not using direct shunts or chokes in the input lines like a ferret beads that my friend, and I'll probably have him on sometime next week, good Lord willing, Dr. Arthur Bradley. We've talked about it. We hadn't scheduled an exact time yet. He's been on my channel before, and he's quite the expert in protecting systems from these kind of effects. Oh yeah, by the way, guys, we've got 199 people in the room, and we only got 97 thumbs up. Come on, guys, help me with the algorithms. That we need some help to promoting these topics in this channel. So if you give a thumbs up, that definitely helps, guys. So I hate to blow the horn on that, but we really need it for these channels to get this word out. This is a very vital word that has been brought to you tonight by John Hollerman. So we need all the algorithms on our side because they really don't like what we talk about sometimes. So let's help us out and throw a bunch of thumbs up in here, guys. All right, so Jonathan.
Hey, there's a question here. I'll go and answer the first question that's being asked here. I'm seeing the question was asked, what are the odds the Russians could smuggle in the country and set off such a powerful EMP from the top of a tall building in a large city and get the kill the city effect? Anything's possible. I'm not saying that it's not possible. A bang for the buck. Again, if they detonate this thing that close to the ground, there's going to be residual effects from that nuclear weapon. We're going to know within a couple hours exactly who hit us, and that's at that point they have hit us with a nuclear weapon because it was that close to the ground. There are Peter probably talks a lot about there are direct energy EMP weapons that would more likely be used in a situation like that to take down a city, but they don't need to do that. The Russians have been mapping our electric grid for a decade. I mean, what was that? The SolarWinds hack. I mean, they've been in our systems. What the U.S. Admiral Rogers, head of U.S. Cyber Command, geez, that was 6 years ago, told us that the Russians at that time had the ability to flip the switch on electric grid at any given point. It's on C-SPAN. It was in an interview with Congress or with the National Defense Team there, and he warned them. He said, I think it's going to happen in the near future before my term is ended. That was 6 years ago, and he's gone. So we were talking about Roscoe Bartlett with that meeting with the Russians. Guess what? Roscoe Bartlett retired from Congress at the ripe old age of 91. Guess what he did? He sold his DC mansion and he bought an off-grid property in West Virginia. So the people that know are taking steps. The people that have been on the inside of this thing are taking steps. I work with a lot of those people to help them out. And it is what it is.
So we talked about the prepping, and people really got to get ready for this. And they're really not prepared. They have no clue what they need to do. I mean, everybody knows we need to get supplies, but we got to start banding together. Lone prepper's not going to make it. This is something you talked about. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so I've looked at, I have a YouTube channel. I have a Patreon channel, which is basically news updates and, I do give out preparedness advice and live Q&As through my Patreon page. But my YouTube channel never really tried to grow, because what I see in the preparedness community on YouTube is it is an echo chamber of self-licking ice cream cones. I mean, I hear one, top prepper expert, hey, I have a strategy, do this. And then all of a sudden the next guy's saying it, and the next guy's saying it, and the next guy's saying it. And I'm like, yeah, that was on Walking Dead, last weekend. Right. I mean, like literally, that's the dumbest that's going to get people killed. I mean, you have entire websites designed to urban prepping. There's more resources in the city. Yeah, there's 1,000% more population density in the city. Those resources are going to be gone really stinking fast. You just sneak around at night, and you're going to sneak around at night. Yeah, everybody's going to be sneaking around at night, and everybody's going to be armed, and it's just a lot of the ideas that I see online for dealing with this are just clown shoes. And I at this point, I don't want to enter the fray, because I'm kind of the lone man out. Like, am I the only one that's ever, starved a day? Well, I mean, I was a SEER instructor. Our first trip was 28 days, and they gave 8 of us a box of vegetables and a goat for 28 days. I lost 15 pounds. So, I mean, I've been there. A lot of my life's work, after the EDTF, I was asked by the leadership to write a white paper, which hasn't been released publicly, but it's called The Psychology of Human Desperation, Starvation, and Living in a World Without Rule of Law. And it was a white paper for the military to kind of prepare for this situation mentally, because they think that their troops are just going to all show up the day after. But has nobody ever read Letters from the Warsaw Ghetto? Has no one ever done any research into psychology and realized that when you take food away from people, when you take oversight away from people, when you take, when they don't know what's happening, there's no police, there's no military rolling down the streets like in the movies. It's just kind of, and that's gonna de-escalate really, really fast. It's gonna fall apart, even in the country. So that's another thing I hear. Oh, I live in this little tiny country town of 500 people. We're going to be just fine, just like the book 1 Second After. Well, let me clue you in. The book 1 Second After is one of my favorite books. I recommend it all the time. William Forsythe is amazing. But there's a big black hole in that book. Towards the end, there's a big leap in time from the end of fall to spring. And they never explain how they fed that town of 500 people through the entire winter. The average human eats 2,000 pounds of food a year. That's a metric ton. So for that 500 people, they would have had to produce for 6 months. They would have had, or over the winter, that town would have had to find 250 metric tons of food to keep those people fed. And so that's the problem is people are like, well, we need more organization. We need more planning. We need more, we need to have rules set in place to handle this, to govern this. The problem is what they don't get is when you take food, when people start to die of starvation, it's like herding cats. You can't control those people. The human mind, because I've been there, the human mind plays tricks on you. When you go a week without food, that's the only thing that you can think about. When you go 2 weeks without food, which I've never even done, but the mental gymnastics that are going to happen to people. And the thing is, it's like what holds society in check. People are like, well, that could never happen in America. We've evolved, we're social, we have social contracts, and it can never get that bad here in America. We'll bootstrap, we'll work together. But a situation like this has never happened here, and they just don't understand the effects that starvation is going to have on people. Any of those agreements and any of those things that happen if people starve. So the key to this is having small groups, private groups. I want to be careful. There's some big groups out there. You could pay a monthly membership and show up when the time comes, and they bring the cameras in and show them their bunkers and their facilities and everything. Guess what? Those places are getting rolled on day 2. There's tons of, if not by some military reserve unit that's out of power, out of diesel, out of food, rolling up and taking over one of those locations. there's entire chat forums on the prepper sphere discussing rolling those places. So you have to be really careful what you're doing. You have to be around people that you trust, probably kin folk, people that that you have blood ties to. You just have to be really careful how you form these groups and who you're trusting with your life. Because at the end of the day, here's another thing. So if we haven't really talked about it, I have a company called Grid Down Consulting. Nobody in this country has analyzed more survival retreats than I have. I've done over 500 survival retreats around the country. I've worked with all types of preppers, mostly people that have a decent income, up to millionaires and even billionaires. I've built tons of really large infrastructure, but I've seen it. I can't say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot of things, right? And what I can tell you is most groups, even the really good groups, they don't have near enough food. They don't have near enough this. They have tons of guns and ammo, but they don't have the life skills, and they don't have this, or they don't have this. And they form groups of people that that come and go out of their retreat. Those people are a threat after the fact, because that's where they're coming. That's the only food source they have. Even though you kick them out of your group doesn't mean they're not going to show up. And they're not going to show up like The Walking Dead and charge across your open field and let you shoot them. They already know your location. They're going to team up. They're going to talk about this with their group in the city, and they're going to get 20 or 30 people and scope you out. And it's just, I read a lot of the prepper fiction stuff, any of the movies that are out there. They're pretty corny, and their idea of how this stuff's going to go down, bullets go two directions. If you need to avoid firefights like the plague. My advice, your best chance of survival in this nationwide grid down long-term event, your best chance of survival is having the least amount of human interaction for as long as possible. That means getting as far away from people as you can. That doesn't mean you have to be 8 hours from the nearest city, because in the East Coast, you drive 4 hours out of a city, you're driving into another city. But you need to get tucked away, end of a dead end road, long driveway. The house, cabin, farm shouldn't be visible from the road, can't be visible from the road. Hide the entrance, steal some signage off of the gas pipeline in the cell phone tower and put it on your gate. Take the mailbox out of there. Any signs that's human habitation back there. Try and tuck yourself away as best as you can for as long as you can. That's your best chance of survival. Now, with that said, I'm going to kill a couple other prepper birds here. And I know I'm in the minority. I'm in the 3% of people that are saying this, because all the other prepper experts realize that not everybody can afford a multi-million-dollar survival retreat. And so what they're going to do is they're going to make you feel really good. And they're going to give you all these strategies and all this expert advice on how just stay in town. That's where your stuff is. Just paint your door with red X so people think it's already been searched. Throw some trash out in the yard. Nobody's going to figure it out. You can't, that's just not going to work. You're going to have to build a fire to cook, to boil water at some point. You just can't hide in plain sight. The gray man strategy there is time and place for the gray man strategy, but long-term survival in a city with a gray man strategy is going to get you killed. I'm sorry, but it is, right? And so your best strategy is to get out of town quick. And that's another thing I hear a lot is like, stay at your home as long as possible. And if it really does get bad, then you may have to bug out, right? No.
I use the gray man to tell people to get home. You want to get home.
Yes.
Gray man has value, but you can't sustain yourself in a city with it. In fact, I've had people ask me several times, what's your top prepping strategy for living for Las Vegas or someplace like that? And I said, get out of the city. That's all I tell them. I don't tell them anything else.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And so the problem is that is an overwhelming idea to most people. They don't have the resources. They don't have a place to go. So what I am not advocating for is the open road technique. Well, jump in your RV and hit the open road. No, that's within a week or 2 weeks, ambushes on the road. There could be groups traveling the open roads. You don't want to be on the open road. You need to have a place to go to, whether that's Uncle Bob's farm, your third cousin, Timmy, that you haven't talked to in 3 years. It might be time to pick up the phone and call them. Just say, hey, how's it going? Don't talk prepping with them. Don't freak them out. Just re-engage that relationship, right? And your best chance in, if you have supplies in your home, in suburbia, in the city, stage it next to Timmy's house, find a storage unit, move all your food, all your resources to that storage unit, climate controlled storage unit. When the time hits a fan, your New York liberal farmer, second cousin Timmy, who you couldn't talk to about this stuff because he's a nut. No offense to anybody from that side of the aisle, but that didn't want to hear any of this stuff. He's going to think you're a genius when you show up with food and water and guns and ammunition. He's going to realize that you actually knew what you were talking about. So there are strategies. I lay out some other strategies on a strict budget. My book is Survival Theory: How to a Preparedness Guide, How to Survive the End of the World on a Budget. Because I wrote that book because I was working with all these high net worth guys and they have the money to do this. And it was kind of my trying to pay it back a little bit to the guys like I used to be that couldn't afford that type of setup. But I mean, there are other options. Here's the option that cannot be is staying in the city. So this idea that, hey, I'm going to stay here as long as I am, and your brain's going to play tricks on you. When this thing happens and it's going down, your home is your safe space. That's where you've lived safely for however long you've lived in that home. That's your safe space. That's where all your stuff is. That's where your guns are. That's where your food is. That is, your brain's going to tell you, stay here, stay here, stay here. So let's say you do that, and 2 weeks into this, it gets way worse than I'm even describing now, which it will. And all of a sudden, it's like, this was a bad idea to stay here. We need to get the heck out of Dodge and go to Timmy's farm now. Well, guess what? Now you're 2 weeks, 3 weeks into an event, hitting the open road. You're never going to make it to Timmy's farm. Timmy, hey. So yeah, it's my recommendation is that if you live in a city, if you live in suburbia, you need to have a plan of action to get out of the city to another location. So, if you can't afford, here's a strategy. And this isn't a great strategy, but trust me, this will be better than a month later if you stay in town and, your people are getting shot in your house and you think back to this conversation right here today, and you're going to realize that you probably should have done something different. Here's a simple strategy. Use Google Earth and Google and find some rural bed and breakfasts 2-3 hour drive away from you. There's a lot of them tucked away. They have a lot of times they have like these little working dude ranches, these little places. Do a satellite view, zoom in on the location, see if there's a garden out back. A lot of them will serve you like fresh egg breakfasts, and they have chickens and they garden fresh vegetables. Try and find a bed and breakfast or one of these little, I don't want to call it a hippie, ranch, but some place like that. Go there with your wife on a weekend, get away, your girlfriend, your husband, whatever. Go there and spend a weekend. But don't talk prepping with them, but make small talk with the people. See if they're sane. Talk to the owners of the bed and breakfast. Go back a month later. Oh, we enjoyed our time so much. We enjoyed your company. Talk to them. Get to know them. Don't talk prepping. Just get to know them really well. Get them used to your face. Move your food, your supplies to a storage unit next to that location. When the time comes, hey, now they know you. They know your face when you show up with all your food and your seeds and your guns and your ammo, and you tell them, hey, the world just ended and I'm here to help, So that's one strategy. Yes, it's not a great strategy. It's better than the open road technique. It's better than hanging around in town thinking it's not really going to get that bad and it's going to get far worse than you think.
I forgot to mute myself. So, I hear a lot of stuff on other channels, about EMP, prepping. There's all kind of topics, all kind of misinformation. You guys got to be careful what you listen to. One of the real popular channels has stated that if you're on the night side of the earth when they get a solar CME, you don't have anything to worry about. Excuse me. It comes in.
The earth spins.
And think about the absolutely fried transformers on the dark side of the earth that happened with the Quebec hydro event.
Yep.
1989. It was 2 a.m. in the morning. It was very dark in Quebec. and their grid got fried and taken down by the sun, which they weren't looking at, but that guy got more views on that video than I get on mine. And I see smaller channels coming on here with crazy comments like that, and I get people even in my comments say, "Oh, go to this channel and watch that. This guy has done several videos. He knows what he's talking about." And I'll open up the video, and right off the bat, he's talking about targets, nuclear targets and states, and he's got mixed up. He thinks the old DEW line is still in operation. He didn't realize that Fort Gridley would be a target with its anti-ballistic missile systems. He had I can't even get past the A's on the state list because he had assets that's supposed to have been in Arkansas and Arizona, and it's just all a mishmash, and it's just things like that constantly I'm seeing out there that people are putting out, and they get on the tube and they talk like they know what they're talking about, and people are listening. If you're not familiar with the topic area, it sounds like good information. It sounds like the guy knows what he's talking about, but you need to really be careful, guys. Some of the stuff that you're listening to.
There's more misinformation in this world today than there is information. I mean, the internet and the amount of information that you can access at a moment's notice on a small device in your hand is astronomical to think about 30 years ago. The information we have at our fingertips. The problem is, whether you're talking about the media, education, critical race theory, the vaccines, and COVID. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to bleep that out. You're gonna get flagged here. The vid situation, and I'm not saying stances either way. I'm just saying there's more misinformation in this world. We're living in a post-truth world. You have to understand where you're getting your information is and what their qualifications are. I'll give you two examples. One, this was years ago. Had a great conversation with a guy. Kind of got to know him through Instagram. We did some promotions together. Runs one of the largest bug out bag kind of websites at that time. I don't know if he is today or not, but he had a pretty big website and very successful. And I was watching one of his YouTube videos one day, and he was promoting it was titled, they always have these great titles, the #1 best survival knife, for prepping, right? And I was like, okay, I talked to this guy a couple days ago. Let me click on it. And he pulled out, and it was the K-Bar Becker BK2. And I don't know if familiar with that knife. I own that knife, okay? So I'm not sitting here bashing anybody that owns the knife. But there's a time and a purpose for everything. That thing's a pig sticker. That thing weighs 22 ounces. It's a 1/4 inch thick, okay? And he was like, oh, you could cut trees down with it. And he's like, he's like beating this like tree, and I think it was green, okay? And he's like trying to like chop this thing down, and it's you can see his sweat and his vein popping out his, and so he's like giving all this information, and so on that topic, just my recommendation would be a lighter sheath knife, like a Cold Steel SRK, the one with the better steel, and then carry a silky folding saw, like a 10-inch folding saw. You're going to get a lot further with that, and those two items weigh less than that one knife that he had, right? So those two items with their sheaths are going to get you a lot further than that. So anyways, I'm watching this video, and I was talking to him a couple days later, because we were running this promotion together, and I was like, so yeah, watch that video, what, tell me about that. Like, where did you, what were you, what other knives did you consider? And he was like, oh, something. He was like him-hawing around. And then, so I started asking him a little more pointed questions nicely, just trying to get into his brain on why he was, clearly didn't know what he was talking about. And he goes, you know what? He goes, truth of the matter is, he goes, I've never even been camping. He goes, the guy has the biggest bug out channel. He's making YouTube videos, professional camera, never even been camping, complete fraud. Second story, you can go right now, and I think it was the Daily Co's, which is like a far left website. There's an article, I think it's titled Stories of a Prepper Ghostwriter, okay? And I've been approached multiple times for people to write for me, right? And this was a guy that wrote multiple, like, very popular books, wrote, I forget, like 100 prepper articles, right? And he hates preppers. He thinks we're nuts. He thinks we're a bunch of lunatics. But he's like, I've made tons of money off these idiots, and I just write whatever I think. You know what I mean? And so you really got to be careful, kind of where you're getting your information. The guy with the 300,000 followers and the fancy camera, and he's really funny, because I ain't funny. I know it. But the guy that's doesn't, look at his bio, try and find some information on his background and what gives him the right to give you that information that he's giving you. A lot of times I'll see like their expertise is, I grew up in Louisiana hunting and fishing with my grandfather. It's like, well, that doesn't make you an expert on this stuff, and I don't know. Sorry. I'm getting on a soapbox. I'm on a rave today here, Greg.
Well, we'll have to do a video specifically on this topic of what the preppers tell you wrong.
Yeah.
Be tuned for that, and it'll be a lot of this kind of stuff. But there is a lot of information out there that will get you in trouble. And there's just a lot of things that people don't understand, like comms. Comms will get you killed faster than anything.
Yes. Yeah.
In so many ways. So many ways. Most people would be better off without them. If you don't know what you're doing with them, you're better off without them, because you're getting in trouble in so many ways. There are so many things, and you need to understand military tactics if you got to go out and about. You need to form groups and squads, and if squad has 2 fire teams, and you need 2 fire teams to eliminate a sniper if you get into that. But you better have people know what they're doing and know how to fire and cover. So you need some military training to do those kind of things. Just anybody isn't going to be able to pull that off. The survival training, somebody that's never been camping, if he's on a K-bar trying to shut down a tree, that's funny. I've got K-bar. I did a video of my 3 favorite knives, and one of them was a Swiss Army knife, a pocket, which was just a little pocket knife. It's called the Tinkerer. It wasn't a big one with spoons and forks. I think that's ridiculous. But this is it right here.
Yeah.
And that's a very good tool. It's actually a little multi-tool. I got the screwdrivers and hole punches, but it's
mine's not quite as small as yours, but it is relatively small. I see people carrying pocket knives that you could like kill a horse with.
Yeah. But then I got a K-bar, that's for the horse. And I've got a bolo knife. It's kind of like a machete, but a lot thicker, a little shorter. But when I was a kid camping out, that was my shovel, my axe, my brush clearer. It was a nice all-in-one multi-tool for me. I could tend fires with it.
Yep.
And I used it to tend my fires. I never carried a hatchet camping.
Which multi-tool? Which multi-tool do you use?
It was a bolo knife. It's just one blade. It's a thick blade, and it's
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
It's not yay long. It's not super long. It's not a machete. I get long machetes, but they would break. This guy's sturdy. I had it since I was 12, and I still got it. And
you need certain tools, and again, it depends on where you're heading. It depends on what your purpose is and how long you plan to be out there. But everybody's pocket knife that I see is way overkill. Pocket knives for little things. It's for whittling and making sharp, specific cuts. A sheath knife is your duty knife, right? A longer 6-inch, 7-inch blade, something that you can split wood fire with by batoning with a stick. And then I really obviously a Leatherman like a multi-tool is really important. But even on the Leatherman side, I see people with these Leathermans that have like 40 things on them. Like, what do you need fingernail trimmers for, on your bug out? You don't need a nail file. What are you doing there?
They might pick up a side job as a manicurist on their way.
Yeah.
I don't know. You got to use your imagination there, John.
That's going to lead you down a dark road after the grid goes down if you're doing that.
I've got multi-tools, but they're simple ones, then you fit in a little pouch on the belt. I don't have the big, multi-$100 ones. Why buy all that stuff? It can be simple.
That's even like flashlights, right? So flashlights for me, I carry a high quality Surefire flashlight in my bug out bag because I have to trust my life to it, right? And I don't have access to others, but they sell $5 LED flashlights at Tractor Supply that probably rival the ones that you're paying $40 or $50 for. And you know what? I'd rather have a drawer full of $5 flashlights than one high quality flashlight, right?
They have problems. They have problems. I got this one here, and I tell you what, it will not recharge through the recharger anymore. I'm having issues with this light. Yeah, it looks like all this great and wonderful stuff, multifunction, but I got an older one. It's supposed to be a survival flashlight. This one has been recharging on solar, and the Steel Shines might have been using it for years. And it's actually pretty reliable. I don't let just anybody carry it though, because I don't want anybody to lose it. And just a ton of these cheaper flashlights that you can get. I got those. I like to wear the ones I can put on my head.
Yes, the headlamps.
And I give them just mini store because you get two hands free to work on stuff. So I like the ones I can just put on my hat, put on my head, and go about business. And I got, I go through those all the time. I've got a couple of them sitting around here somewhere, but those are really my favorites. The one you can just pop on your head.
So on weapons lights, that's a different story. If it's a weapon light, if it's something that's on a weapon, you got to trust your life to it. Spend the money, get the surefire, get the high quality stuff. But like just flashlights for around your camp and stuff, like I've got a whole drawer full of. And here, my personal experience is the less features it has, the longer they last. Like I don't, a high, medium, low is fine. I like just one on, one off for most of my flashlights, right? Just one function. I want it to take AA or AAA batteries. I don't want it to take some weird 18650 that I'm never going to find or barter for after the fact, right? Have it take normal batteries that you can recharge with a solar charger. And you don't need a disco ball. Like every flashlight today wants to put like a strobe feature on it. Like, I don't get it. Like, what are you going to do? Have a party? And I know it's supposed to like disorient people, but I'm sorry. I'm not, unless it's 1,000 lumens of strobe. And even if it disorients someone that's intent, the strobe feature on your flashlight isn't going to stop that person or slow them down. And what are you going to do? Run away and hold it on their eyes as you're running away? I mean, I don't know. Sorry. I'm ranting today.
All this is going to disorient him is you running straight at him going, ah!
You have to do it in a real high-pitched squeal. That'll freak them out.
Banshee yell, huh? Rebel yell, banshee yell, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I guess what they try to do is the fear factor. That's what the war paint was for, to scare people. But
well, they did I forget which police district it was. They did a study because so my weapons lights, I do not have a strobe light on any of my weapons lights. They discovered that when they did a study, and that strobe feature disorients because the light's bouncing off the walls and hitting you back in the face. Disorienting the cops in the environment as almost as much as it was the person that they're trying to attack. And I have a survival, it's called Survival Bug Out DVD, a couple DVDs set through the Survival Summit. And in that we did some studies showing that with a strobe feature, if somebody's reaching in their back pocket, are they grabbing the wall? You can't tell what they're doing with the strobe feature on, as if you just had a solid 500, 700,000 lumen light in their face. You can't look into 1,000 lumen flashlight from 10 feet away. You just can't. You've got to divert your eyes. You don't need to turn the disco ball on in front of it, because you're not going to be able to tell what they're doing with their hands, and it's going to disorient you to a degree as well as them. So that's my rant on the flashlight issue.
Very good. Very good. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground already. We've been on here just a little over an hour now. We got 213 people in the room. Let me just look to see if there's any particular questions. All right, guys, if you got any particular questions, it's a good time to pop one out here. Let's see. People are just making comments in general mostly. Flashlights on 18650s, rechargeable batteries. Yeah, you don't buy those. We got them all over the Space Launch System. Rocket. Tesla don't even use those. He's yet to come up with his own battery for lithium ion. So I don't know, 18650s are kind of odd. So you can't even break into Tesla and get one.
I have flashlights with 18650, so I don't want to poo-poo anybody that has that, but I wouldn't have that be your only source of battery, because those batteries can get lost, they can get fried, they can get fried in the charger. make sure you have a flashlight that takes normal batteries that are accessible when the time comes.
Okay, we got a question here from Stacy Cape saying, John, how much different will the situation be if 9 major power substations are attacked and destroyed Metcalf style compared to high altitude EMP? That's a good question. And that was
Okay,
something
so
I wanted to key off of earlier. I kind of forgot about it. So that's a good question.
Yeah, so EMP is, I mean, an EMP attack is, we're at Mad Max in a month. Okay, EMP attack is the worst case scenario. Okay, so cyber, okay, so with cyber attacks, they have the ability. So yeah, part of the reason people aren't super scared of cyber attacks, because we've seen China hit Yemen, they've hit India with cyber attacks. We've seen Russia hit Ukraine with cyber attacks on their electric grids, right? So they black out a city for 2 or 3 days, okay? Those are warning shots. Those are shots across the bow. That's hey, look what we can do type thing, right? They're not destroying any of the critical hardware or infrastructure in that system. They're just binarily with computer code turning it off, and that city or that state's got to bring in the computer nerds with the glasses to try and figure out where the bug is and kill the bug, right? And then the lights come back on and everything works like it did before. So that is the first line of attack with cyber attacks, and that's what I envision Russia will probably hit us with first, right? They're probably just going to flip the switch, sort of, right, and turn the lights out. The next stage of cyber attacks, if it escalates, they can destroy infrastructure, they can destroy physical utilities with cyber attacks. They can blow up pipelines. Google the Aurora project, which was a classified military testing of a generator at a substation location. And through cyber, they were able to go into the SCADA equipment in that generator and put it in an out of phase situation where basically the generator brain thought it was going in reverse when it was going forward. You know, they just did a bunch of wonky stuff. And the thing, you can watch the video, literally blows up out of the ground because it was an underground generator. It blew up out of the dirt. They have the ability, especially with these new Chinese transformers, they have the ability to destroy factories. You know, they have the ability to destroy stuff. So if they start breaking the electric grid, that's a different story, because that's not something you can fix real fast. With the software cyber attacks, you can come in there, you got to clean the code out, you got to get the smart people in there with their big brains to come in there and fix the thing, right? If they start breaking stuff with the cyber attack, that's the next level. Now we're not talking days or a week without power in New York. Now we're talking weeks, possibly a month without power in Florida or New York, like the Putin representative said. So that's kind of the next stage, where they start breaking stuff. What we don't want them to do is, if they, Allison mentioned earlier, Greg mentioned earlier, the high voltage transformers in this country are America's Achilles heel. They're 400 tons. They used to come from South Korea and Germany. They're more and more coming from China, who's undercutting them and sending them into our country with backdoors in them, so they can just turn them off or break them whenever they want. And they take 12 to 18 months to build. 12 to 18 months without power is going to be real bad. It doesn't matter how you slice that cat. It's going to get really, really bad. So that's the next phase, where they start breaking stuff. If they start destroying our high voltage transformers through cyber and blowing up pipelines and things like that, it could be months. So it's one thing to sit here and say, oh, you know, so I guess what I'm trying to explain is, a cyber attack isn't always just going to be a 6 or 8 or 10-day event. And if you've never watched, there's American Blackout. I don't know if it's Discovery or History Channel did a kind of a docudrama thing here about 6 or 7 years ago. It was actually really accurate. It showed how fast that kind of society fell apart when you black out the lights and none of the toilets work, none of the faucets work, heat, AC, phones, none of that stuff worked. It kind of showed really well how fast things fell apart. on the flip side, they did paint the prepper guy. I mean, rocking a flat top, camouflage pants, total cliched, prepper guy in there. And they did a good job of showing loose lips sink ships. The young girl in the prepper thing was talking, and then the neighbors started gathering on the fence line. That's going to happen if you talk about your stuff. That's going to happen whether you talk, if it's neighbors, they might figure it out sooner or later anyway. But those types of scenarios will happen, and then magically the power comes back on right when the conflict's getting ready to start. And then everybody just goes back to Starbucks the next day driving their Prius after the guy can't, cave the other guy's head in with a can of peaches, fighting over a can of peaches. The society just doesn't come back from 10 days without electricity. That's not how any of this works again, right? So
good Holly weird. It makes for good Holly weird. But see, there's a tangent here we didn't explore that deserves it. We have in the United States, from a policy standpoint, suggested that we might launch a nuclear attack on somebody, puts a cyber attack on us if it were severe enough, that at least that we may respond in warfare. But there has been policy discussions about going all the way with it. So it's and that could have been just bluster, but I seriously doubt they would have said that if there wasn't something behind it. So cyber attack is a form of warfare. And a lot of people just don't realize where this could lead. But the whole idea of taking our grid, if they actually start destroying these high voltage transformers, the step up, step down transformers responsible for the long distance power transmission in our country, you're not going to be a few months getting it back. It takes 18 months to get one on the deck of your loading dock from the time you order it, but you're not going to have the infrastructure to order it with in the first place. And the people aren't going to be there to put it together when you finally get it. So that's why I said Humpty Dumpty's falling off the wall, and you're not going to put them back together again. You're not going to get the same thing back that you had before. Our nation is going to be in an extreme world of hurt. This is stuff that's to be taken serious. And as far as a lot of people are saying, well, fine, let the grid go down. I can take care of myself. Well, you got to contend with all the hordes coming out of the city. And you've also are going to have to contend with these nuclear power plants. Now, I know I had a speaker, Craig, that kind of made it sound like, it's no big deal. Well, he was responding to probably the overreaction of doomsday people that, there's no hope. Well, there is hope.
Who was it? Who was it, Greg?
Craig Douglas. So he sells a lot of detection equipment. But the thing is, what he didn't account for, and he was not aware of, is how these spent fuel pod rules, rules, not pod rules. I was trying to get my words crossed. How once that stuff melts down, it's going to be giving off radiation for years. And a couple other things he didn't neglect was that even though alpha particles are the easiest to block, they're actually the most dangerous because they're helium atoms without the electrons. So there's a 2+ positive charge. They're very electrically charged. So you do not want to ingest them. If you ingest them, they're the most dangerous. The beta are the second most dangerous should you ingest a beta particle. But the beta particles actually decay giving off a gamma ray. So you got to be careful. That's how, after a couple of weeks after everything's decayed down, you're safer to get out and move around. But while this stuff is decaying, you don't want to be out in it. So there's a few nuances that just need to be brought up to clarify some of those things. And that the nuclear power plants are still a threat, and there is still stuff like that, the cesium that gets spread around the world. It's been in low dosages, and when it's just a couple of power plants, it's manageable. If you get all our power plants going off, it's not going to be a good thing to have all this stuff going around the world.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission was at the Electromagnetic Defense Task Force wargaming event that I was at. Most of their meetings were TS2 stuff that I, didn't have access to, but some of the unclassified stuff that I had was privy to and shared with you. First of all, they've never had their backup generator. So you were talking about the nuclear fuel, the spent fuel rods that are in the cooling pools. You have to maintain water running over those. That's why if you look at a nuclear facility, it's always near a river or a lake, because you have to keep cool water going over those rods and the backup diesel generators. And so the funny thing is the nuclear power plants need electricity from the grid to function. They can't run black. And
by that, you mean they can't run off their own power. I just want to
Yes, thank you. They can't run off their own power. Yeah. And so the backup generators to keep water going over those cooling rods, they've never, the 99 facilities, they've never had them tested. If that's not the biggest EMP test, if that's not the biggest oversight in history, and their response was, well, they're really old diesel generators, will probably work. Okay, fine. I'll actually bite. If they're older diesel generators and they have manual overrides, fine. Okay, I'll bite. I would still probably throw one an EMP generator just to see, just to make sure it doesn't cost that much, So that was the first thing. The second thing was the first year, they had no emergency supplies at a nuke. So on that generator thing, they only have 7 days of backup, 7 to 10 days at each facility, and it's their contract for resupply is a civilian contract. Okay, I'm sorry, but no trucker from Texas is going to haul a diesel tanker from Texas to Massachusetts 3 months into a grind down scenario. That's assuming the truck even works, right? That's just never going to happen.
Where's he going to get the fuel to make that run from? There's going to be no fuel.
Right, the roads are clogged. They're going to, a diesel tanker cruising down the street. That's going to get
because the vehicles it won't run. The pumps at the service stations won't work, and there'll be no spare trucks parts to maintain the truck because the supply chain is shattered. So he won't be able to. I just did an interview with Cowboy Roy Rogers, who's in the chat room, and he's a trucker. And I did that interview with him last night just to illustrate that in part. Well, we also talked about the Freedom Convoy going on in Canada. So we talked about that, and we also talked about this supply chain issues with maintaining the trucker fleet. And he'll come in here and tell you in a heartbeat that you can't do it. And as any other trucker I know will tell you that, because I've had them all tell me that to a person. It takes a lot of maintenance to keep these trucks running. And there's no way to do that when the grid goes down. And that's the problem. Military units, if they have enough reserve supplies, might do something. But you got to remember, the military bases themselves in America are run off the grid. And another thing, we've hardened parts of the triad, but how well have we actually hardened our ability to communicate an EAM, emergency alert message, to tell our strategic forces to launch something? I mean, how do they do that in a situation like this? So
yeah. So and PA EMT, I'm going to answer your question here in just a second. So the second thing I was at I was invited to the second EDTF. They had one the year before, and the first year it was announced, they had no food, no supplies for any of their employees at the nuclear facility. It's kind of like, why would anybody, stay here? So the second year that I was there, they showed up and they're like, oh, just so you know, from last year, we took your advice and we have, I forget how much they had, I think 3 weeks of food and water for their critical employees, right? And I was like, well, what about the critical employees' families? Well, they don't have security clearances to come in. I'm like, if you think some button pusher that has to sit there and make sure that nuclear facility stays, functioning, if you think that person is going to stay there for 3 weeks when he can look over his shoulder and that city's burning over his shoulder where his wife and kids are, if you think he ain't going home to be with his wife and kids, and you're not going to allow him to bring his wife and kids into the facility with the security team and the food, I was like, you need to have, and they're like, well, that would be crazy to try and get them the class, get them classified. I said, who cares about it at that point? Just have the food and the stuff there and just bring them in when the time comes and figure it out later, right? Just tell them, don't touch that, put them in another room. But if you think the people that you need to work how did that not even pop into your brain? Like, you think this guy is just going to sit here for 3 weeks in a total collapse scenario while his wife and kids are, and totally, or if husband and kids, I don't want to exclude the ladies in the chat room here. So my point is people are not going to stay there. So the question that PAMT asked was distance. So you're going to get a million different answers on this. So I asked the question there from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, not in the setting, but, kind of behind 50 miles I wouldn't be within 50 miles of a nuclear facility. Okay. A lot of people say the East Coast is going to be completely radioactive. Okay, if you look at Fukushima, okay, and I forget the distance, and you're going to hear people say, well, there's nuclear particles coming across the ocean. To a degree, yeah, but it's not stuff that's going to make you grow an 11th toe in a year. Okay, it's very small trace amounts. Okay, but if you look at what's the Russian facility that blew up?
Chernobyl,
yeah. If you look at Chernobyl,
Ukraine. It's actually in Ukraine.
Yes, yeah. That was the exclusion zone's only 35 miles, and that place didn't. That wasn't a meltdown. That wasn't a Fukushima situation, or what we would have with the cooling rods, and they burn off and they slowly just melt, and they just release radioactive particles. That was an explosion. They had an open. There was no container roof on the situation, and it was just pumping stuff into the air. And that area was the exclusion zone was only 35 miles in a circle, right? And so like the nuclear threat does get overblown a bit. There are 99 nuclear facilities in this country. The majority of them are on the East Coast. If you look at the East Coast map, if you're asking about preparedness, at least 50 miles. I personally wouldn't be 50 miles. I'd want to be closer to 100 at least. But if you look at the map of the East Coast, if you're on the East Coast and you have to stay on the East Coast, there's a swath from like Kentucky, Tennessee, up through West Virginia. I think probably the number one state for prepping on the East Coast is definitely West Virginia. The seasonal, the black earth. I mean, everybody wants to go to Idaho. Here, I'll give you another little hint. Bonners Ferry, Idaho. Guess what? Tons of preppers, tons of clients in that area. Everybody's a prepper up there. None of them have enough food. I'm telling you. And they're not squared away as they think. There's a whole heck of a lot of prepper groups that followed. And I love James Wesley Rawls in his book, but like everybody gravitated to the Great Redoubt, right? And everybody's up there, and none of them have as much crap as they do, but they all got a lot of guns and they all got a lot of ammunition. If you move up there, it's going to be a war zone. Okay, these prepper groups, the ones that aren't making it, okay, and everyone's got their comms, like Greg was talking about, and everyone's talking on the radio. Oh yeah, I mean, triangulation. Come on, guys, like stay away from those big prepper areas. Find a place, tuck yourself away.
I know what their number one dietary item is going to be, John. Long pork.
Yeah, possibly.
For those that don't know, that means each other.
Yeah.
I mean, what else is going to be left?
well, let's kill another sacred cow while we're doing this. The lone wolf approach. Okay, I'm going to go take my pack and live off the mountain. Go into the national forest and live off the mountain. Guess what? I've actually done that. 28 days, mountains of Washington State, January, 6 feet of snow on the ground. The warmest day was like 19 degrees. Box full of vegetable and a goat for 8 dudes. Okay. I've done that. I've been there. I don't want to do that. Okay. 99% of the people that plan to go do that don't really have the life skills that they think that they have to live through the winter in the mountains. Okay. But let's assume that you do. Okay. I use this analogy a lot. So if you heard it before, you heard it before. But like I said, I'm a one-trick pony. Let's say you were raised by a pack of mountain wolves in Alaska, and you actually have the life skills to go out there and whittle yourself a hut and do all the cool bushcraft skills that you spent all those years watching YouTube. Okay, let's say you go out there and you do that. What you can't bank on is the 99% of the other yahoos that are doing the exact same thing as you in the exact same patch of woods that you're in. Okay, that don't have your life skills, that don't have your abilities. You've got to make a fire at some point to boil water and to cook your rabbit, assuming there's even a furry animal left in the woods, because we have game seasons for a reason, and everybody's in those same patch of woods killing every little furry animal bigger than a mouse and the mice. Okay, so
the mice are going to be
you have to sleep at some point. You have to build a fire at some point. You have to shoot an animal at some point. You have to live in the woods. At some point, somebody's going to stumble across you. You're going to stumble across somebody that's in a tree stand somewhere that hasn't eaten in 3 weeks. They're going to see that beautiful pack on your back, and they're going to blow your brains out to figure out if you got a scrap of food in your pack. So this lone wolf idea that's glorified in the movies, that everyone's like, oh, let's go live in a national forest. Don't do it. Bad plan.
Oh yeah. Every time you pull on the trigger, you're saying, "Here I am, here I am."
Yep.
And there was something I was pointing at, so it might be me and something worth eating. And I've got something that you might want to have in order to get something to go eating. And so that's going to attract the snipers and the ambushers and all those kind of folks. Every time you pull a trigger, it's called a report, you know, when the sound of a weapon makes. And it does report. It reports where you are. It reports who you are. At the very least you could do is go silent hunting. I got a little blow dart here. That thing can be somewhat effective. But, you know, how long are you going to find anything bigger than a mouse is going to be a really good question, and it's not going to be very long. So I know that's big enough for a mouse. There are people taking down warthogs and deer with these, by the way, but you got to be really skilled at that kind of thing. But this is.
But that's the other thing, that a lot of people watch a YouTube video on something. They're like, that's an awesome idea. They go out and they buy some kind of this or that, and they never really, they might use it once or twice and never get proficient with it. Right. And when your life depends on it, is not the time to get proficient with a new tool or a new implement or a new means of self-protection.
It will be a toy. It will be a toy at that point.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you really want to use it, make sure it's not a toy, that you really do know how to use it. So, yeah, that's the challenge. And these things do take a lot of skill to use some of these things, a lot of skill. I mean, it's doable, but it's doable within certain bounds. And, you know, can you really feed yourself that way? You got to consider all these things. Traps.
Hey, Greg, somebody just commented, blowguns are illegal in my state of California. You need to get out of California. If you can't own a blowgun, you're really screwed.
Well, you know, preferring California, you're probably screwed from left and right anyway. So
I've got clients in Northern California. There's some great areas up in the redwoods and the coast and areas. The problem is you just can't own the guns you need to defend yourself. And yeah, they're stepping on your freedoms.
We call them nugs here.
Yeah.
I asked people if they hugged their nug today. Hug a nug. But, you know, we like to kind of twist words around. We got to be kind of black powder. Yeah, I got some black powder, Elton. Lots of it. Lots and lots of that stuff. You know.
All right.
So there's a lot of things to consider. Now, that may be good for some hunting and taking care of yourself, but, you know, if you got to go up against somebody with an AR, you're going to be in a tough spot, at least initially, until they run through all their AR metal jacketed heavy metal propellers. As I call it, another word for them is freedom seeds, for those that may know them by that name. Somebody says, I got good about preps and nugs and bolts. There you go, and humane. Not a lot of people will be thinking about humane at this point in time. Somebody asked a question earlier. Somebody asked about how to do a Faraday cage. What do you want to say to that, John?
Okay, so here's the answer. Is anybody that's giving you a definite answer on this on YouTube don't know what they're talking about? Okay, and I can state that because I've spoken with the guys that are protecting the military hardware stuff. Okay, so here's the truth. When we did all of our EMP testing and all of our tests, we did it at 50 kilovolts per meter with Starfish Prime experiments and those experiments. That's all the test data we have. Okay, and we have some information that we got from China after the Iron Curtain fell, or I'm sorry, from Russia after the Iron Curtain fell. So there's no easy answer. If you want 100% to be absolutely certain that your device is going to survive, you're looking at 3/16" plate steel. It's got to be die tested, double welded on both sides to make sure you don't have any air gaps. Your seal has to be, you know, get 100 decibel RF gasket, not in 6 pieces and piece it milled together. It's got to be, and those seals are about $150 each. We're actually, some of the guys I met offered to do some free testing for me. It's usually 20 grand at a test, like a big EMP test facility to get stuff tested. So I have built some multiple different styles of boxes. We're going to test the old trash can idea too. And we're going to send these off to one of these facilities and get some stuff tested. It may not be for another month or two. And I'm going to release that information for free because I wanted to get it out to the American public. If you put your ham radio stuff into a $35 trash can, here's the thing. If a $35 trash can from Lowe's would protect against a super EMP, why does the military spend so much money on this? Why wouldn't they just go to Lowe's and buy a whole bunch of trash cans? Okay, ask yourself that question. If it was that simple, so it's a lot more complicated. But to answer your question, what type of EMP is it? Is it a super EMP? Is it an off-the-shelf nuke from Iran that just they put up on a weather balloon? How close are you to ground zero? Are you 1,000 miles away, 30 miles away? So it's not an easy answer. So anybody that says, top 3 ways, get some chicken wire and wrap it around. No, that's put stuff in a microwave. Well, if that was the case, the military would be buying old microwaves left and right, okay, to put their stuff in. That's not how any of this works, okay? So I'm going to tell you definitively, and you can believe me or not, 99.3% of the information on EMPs, on EMP protection of Faraday cages on YouTube is just completely factually incorrect. That doesn't mean it doesn't offer any EMP protection. So here's the other thing. A lot of stuff has natural EMP. So my next question is, what are you trying to protect? Is it an open circuit board that's highly sensitive to EMP? Then yeah, you need full EMP protection. Cell phones, you could take one cell phone and put it in an EMP generator and take another model, and one gets fried and one doesn't because of the aluminum housing and the way it's sealed. And the military, when they do EMP testing, they were telling me that like they have to test each individual component individually and then put it into the entire system and then test the entire system. And the things they thought they survived didn't survive. The things they didn't think would survive survived. It's a crapshoot. So it's really hard to tell you. Everything has some kind of RF protection to one degree or another, unless it's an open circuit board. So it's not an easy. I didn't really answer your question, but the truth of the matter is it's not an easy answer. If you want to be 100% sure, 3/16" plate steel, like I mentioned, double welded, die tested, 100 decibel RF gasket on whatever seal that you have. Okay, all these other strategies, the microwaves, the trash cans, I mean they may offer some protection, but so here's my end story. Do not trust your life to if the stuff that you 100% need to live, if that device is going to get you out of Dodge, that device is going to that's your backup LRU for your generator or for your solar panel systems. If it's something that you need to live off of, go whole hog and make sure it's going to survive. Build a full Faraday cage. Okay, so my clients, we buy commercial grade 100 decibel RF shielded, like chest style freezers from Holland Shielding. They cost 10 grand for a chest style freezer. Okay, now if you could have the same protection by building yourself throwing a couple garbage cans together, nobody be buying those. Okay, so just be careful what you hear on the internet.
Yep.
Yes, the cell towers, Deborah, the cell towers will be fried.
That's
yeah, absolutely.
I said indeed. So yeah, a lot of people think they're going to have their cell phones protecting them. Well, what for? If the networks, anything that requires a network, forget about it. Ham radios might be worth protecting. You get some protection from some of these devices. I mean, it all blows down to, in physics, what's called Gauss's law. If you can put something in a perfect conductor, that all the electrical charge will go to the outside of that conductor and there won't be any on the inside. But if you're touching it anywhere, you're still going to be in that conductor. So if you had a perfect metal sphere and you had something mounted inside on an insulator, it'd be fine. The problem is you got to open and close it, and how well you do that creates gaps. And this is where they get into the decibels, trying to discern how far down the signal level you're safe for putting things in there. And so, we really don't have a lot, much in the way of good, tight Faraday cages. Now, when I was in the military, our radio sets had, they even had steel mesh around the doors to try to make it a better Faraday cage.
Right.
Closed it. And we were taught that if we had a radio plugged in, that it would be fried by an EMP. And we were taught not only do you disconnect everything, but don't leave the cables close, because the voltage can jump pin to pin, jump gaps. If you throw a switch, the voltage surge can jump the poles on the switch. We had to have something completely disconnected and the cables put up during an event like that. So yeah, the better your enclosure, the more likely your stuff is to survive. How much does your life depend on it? It might be important that your life not depend on such things. I think that's the better strategy, is that those things might be nice to have to some degree, but really, why should your life depend on electronics? Unless you got a pacemaker or something, but then you got that inside you. So
yeah, you got bigger problems because they don't make a Faraday cage for your person, right? Bubble boy. Yeah. So the problem with the EMP, the wave is a very low frequency, very powerful. It has the ability to penetrate. That's the core. So people talk about tinfoil. Maybe you tinfoil, bubble wrap, tinfoil, bubble wrap, tinfoil. I don't know. The thing of the part is the person telling you to do that, they don't know either. The unnamed company we were talking about the other day, okay, they don't know either. Okay, their test data, okay. Everybody that says, oh, they had this EMP test, okay, you can click on that test data, go to the next to last page where they tested the E1 portion on that device, okay? And what you're gonna see, they have a picture of the test lab when the test was taken. And what you're gonna see is you're gonna see this device hooked up to an electric panel, and then you're gonna see a whole bunch of Romex in that test. Do you know what's not in there? A whole bunch of wooden shelves with laptops and cell phones and microwaves and refrigerators and deep freezers plugged into that stuff, okay? So when they say this protects your whole home, okay, what they proved is their device will survive, no question. No question it will protect against the E3. It will protect against the long line stuff coming into your house, okay? But that test data, if they wanted to prove that it was going to protect electronics, which the electronics, depending on what it is, doesn't have to be plugged in. So I don't know how it could protect something 75 feet away. And I know it's by shunting, but that it wasn't proven by that test data. So maybe their device works, but in that test, I saw nothing in those pictures where they could say, oh yeah, this device protected all this stuff that was plugged into it. Nothing was in that test, okay? And now they're making that same device for your cars and for your generators, and they're using the same test data that didn't even prove anyways, I'm sorry. I think we've given away I think the cat's out of the bag who we're talking about here, but or who I'm talking about. I'm not gonna loop you into it.
I got it covered. Hey, I got it covered. I'm protected. See here, look at this. Check me out, man. I'm covered. Hey, if nothing else, at least I look good in the hat.
Well, that same product that I'm talking about, I use on every one of my survival retreats. I have one on my home. Okay. So I'm not anti the device. It's perfect for a solar flare cyber attack. And it offers lightning protection, all kinds of things. The problem is the E1 portion of the, it's an advertising issue that I have with the company. Okay. If they just advertise it for what it actually works for, I'd be cool with that. But the problem is and where the reason I have an issue with this is there's hundreds of, I would assume, because of the amount of advertising this company they do, there's all these people that are still putting this on their cars and their houses and, hey, we're good now. We're good, right? Well, guess what? When the EMP happens and none of that stuff works, you can't sue the company because the company doesn't exist anymore, okay? There's a lot of companies out there. I'm not saying that's what they're doing. Maybe they're doing it with the best of intentions. But at the end of the day, I think that device is going to get a lot of preppers killed because they're relying on that infrastructure working, and they built their plan around that infrastructure working, and I don't think it's going to work.
No, it's not going to work. But there's more to it than that. What they tested on was just a piece of the spectrum. There's a lot they didn't cover, and furthermore, what they don't, that device shunts things to the ground And you're going to have actually a ground component come up from the ground, especially with the E3 waveform, and it will still get in. So that's not going to help you with that. And it also will still exhibit voltage division. I'm an electrical engineer. I know how this works. You know, even though you've shut most things to the ground, even that copper cable, it's pretty good size, but it's not, you know, it's about your ground strap that goes to the ground in your house isn't as big as you might think. It's not as big around as a pencil, really. It's I think mine is probably not even that big around. It's running into the ground, protecting the house. So it can only carry so much current. I put bigger copper wires in machines I designed when I was doing industrial parts washing machines, especially if they had 75 kW electric dryers on them, running 400 amps. But so there's a lot of questions about that stuff. There's a lot of questions about how much current those actual devices can handle themselves, which is very little, because their wires are only the size of maybe a speaker wire, the wire on a mouse or something like that. They're tiny wires. Now, if they sense things and shut them fast enough and don't see the current, then that device itself might survive. It's got to sense it fast enough. It's got to shut the current, but does it protect your house? Like I said, you still got voltage division. There's still something going in your home. There's still a lot of questions that are not answered. The odd, funny thing though is they claim it will protect your home from 42 EMPs.
Well, so I believe their device will definitely survive 42 EMPs. Whether it protects anything in your house, again, from the E1. So I'm not claiming that they don't protect against E3, but the E1. So even if that device wasn't plugged into the outlet, it's still probably a good chance it could get fried if it's a small microchip device, you know, small radio, something along those lines. But so the at the end of the day, the EMP question is, the last time we did any high altitude testing in the world was 1962 or 61 or 62. Whenever Starfish Prime was, right? That was the last high altitude testing is, okay? And a lot of people don't realize a lot of the test equipment they put out got fried because the test was it was a lot more powerful than they were predicting. It fried a lot of the equipment. So we don't have a ton of data to go off of. We know it's going to be certain, you know, to a certain level, but now with the new weapons that China and Russia and North Korea have, the super EMPs, well, you just don't know. And you know, I get that question. Well, will this work? Well, I don't know. Are you in Florida and it goes off in California? Maybe. Are you in Oklahoma and it goes off in Oklahoma? Probably not, right? So there's no definite answer. Anybody that's online on YouTube, you know, Prepper Expert 102, that's telling you this is what you do, they don't know. I can guarantee you they don't know, because they don't have a TS2 level clearance. And if they were giving that information away on what the new military hardening standard is for super EMP, you know, they'd be getting arrested. So
that's true. That's true. We at first thought that the power output of the EMP Super Weapons was classified, but we found in congressional testimony from 2008. So we knew that we could cite it at that point. Dr. William Graham read it in the congressional record, testifying to Congress in 2008. So it's published. And that's what gave us the confidence to start throwing that number out. So that, you know, there's some things you can pay attention to. Like when something's published, it's no longer a classified. So that's just one of the things we know. Big snowstorm in Oklahoma. Yeah. Let's hope that that's not when somebody would decide to attack us while we got something else going on like that. Or they might attack us when there's a solar storm. So you'd think that it was a solar storm. A lot of things to think about like that, guys. So, you know, they're going to have deniability on their side as much as possible. But, you know, I think we got probably a lot of people in here wasn't in here to begin with. So it might be worthwhile. And we had one person here saying, you know, this is just fear mongering. You know, we've been here trying to tell people what to do, what to get ready. And we're trying to let them know what the threat posture is right now. So maybe we should revisit, maybe you should do a quick recap on what you started with about the cyber warfare aspects and some of the things that the politicians are saying right now that you cited earlier in the call here, John. You might just want to do a quick recap on some of that.
Sure. I'm going to quote Echo Papa here. He just quoted, grid down equals biggest problem is other people, not stuff at a Faraday cage. Ain't that the truth? Yeah. So,
Yep. Amen.
yeah, the guy says I'm fear mongering. That's fine. The amount of information that we could have a 10-hour podcast and go all night long till 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and I still would not be able to impart all the information that I've gleaned over the last 15 years in this industry, all the reports I've read, it's a very complicated subject. And the problem is the media don't cover it. When they do cover it, they go to the electric utility guys that are, on the dole, the EPRI and EEI, and they run basically obfuscation for these big companies. And it's hard to find the information. It's technical information, and there's so much of it. I just released a cyber warfare report on my website, which again, I'll ask Greg to link to it in the comments so people can check it out. It's from 3 days ago. It's basically the situation in Ukraine and China, or Russia and Ukraine. In short, when Russia invades Ukraine, they will black out that country. They'll go after their comms, their electric grid, their military hardware and software. They've already said they're going to do that. They've done it to Kiev twice in the past. That's just going to happen. Ukraine cannot win a ground war against Russia. So before Russia puts one boot in the ground in Ukrainian soil, they're going to block out the country, go after their infrastructure. Because if you can blind and, muffle an opponent and they can't get a lot of their equipment to work, you can almost win the war before you even step foot into the country. That's the future of warfare. And that's just a fact. So they will do that before they go in. Ukraine has no chance of winning a ground war. Their only response, and I linked to comments from Ukrainian cyber officials, their only defense is going to be to hit the Russian motherland with the massive cyber attacks. The Ukrainians, probably half the calls you get asking about your car's extended warranty are probably originating from Ukraine. Ukraine has a lot of hackers in that country. They are going
to. We need to right there. Let's go back to that point. You're talking about the Ukrainians launching the cyber attack. Now, who is it that's in there with?
Oh yeah. I left that little tidbit of information.
That's what I'm worried about. Who is in there already?
3 weeks ago, Biden, and it's in the New York Times. I mean, they announced it. They sent U.S. cyber warfare teams to assist the Ukrainian cyber warfare teams. So our U.S. cyber warfare teams are in Ukraine. So Ukraine has already said when the invasion starts, they're going to go after as much death, destruction, pipelines, electric grids. They're going to go after Russian infrastructure in the homeland to make it as painful on them as possible. They can't stop their troops, but that's their only way of retaliating against Russia is through cyber attacks. Guess what? Our U.S. cyber warfare teams are sitting at the computer terminals right next to the guy pushing the button. Okay. Who do you think Putin's going to blame for that infrastructure blowing up in Russia? Who do you think he's going to retaliate against it? He's already gone after their infrastructure. He's already taken down their grids. Okay. He's going to come after the U.S. They've already stated Putin, one of Putin's top propagandists, has stated 6 months ago this exact thing that we're watching it play out. She said this is going to happen. We're going to go into Ukraine, and the U.S. is going to hit us with a cyber attack, and we're going to take out Florida. We're going to take out New York City. We're going to go, we're talking about a cyber war, tit for tat, and it's going to escalate. And I don't know how far it's go. I'm hoping that we get a punch between the legs here in this country, and somebody, an adult in the room steps into Biden's administration and says, we need to stop this before it gets out of hand. We need to back down, talk this thing out and figure it out. But if we keep retaliating, Russia, we have no chance of winning a cyber war against Russia. Russia's electric grid's built with vacuum tubes and, chicken wire. Ours is built with microchips. So they've been in our grid for decades. So this idea of cyber war being overblown, or read the report, read the comments from these other countries that the media is not really put in front of center, because the media is scare tactic in this, right? It's something that's happening over here. They don't mention that it can affect the homeland. It can affect your city, your state that you live in, and they could take the power down for days or weeks or months or possibly more. So everybody just thinks it's something that's happening over there. It's not going to happen here. Well, guess what? This is the closest we've ever been. China's threatened us. There's a lot of things happening. The idea that cyber war isn't going to happen with the U.S. in the near term, with all this stuff that's happening, this escalation of force, and China going into Taiwan. I mean, they threatened World War III. Their ambassador to the U.S. a week ago threatened a war with the U.S. if we get involved with Taiwan. Putin's threatening us if we get involved with Ukraine, and we're doing it anyway, which I don't know. Anyways, that stuff above my pay grade on the geopolitical stuff and why we're going in, and who knows.
Well, see, what gets me is we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth. We say, well, we're not going to put any boots on the ground, so we're not in there, no troops, and it's like, okay, wink, wink, we're good, don't worry about it. But at the same time, we're putting the cyber warriors in there, so it looks to me to be the same.
I would rather put troops. I would rather put physical troops into Ukraine than send our cyber warfare teams. That was the I think it'll go down as one. If this does happen, it'll go down as one of Biden's biggest, the craziest things he's done. Yeah, okay. I'm not saying we shouldn't help their cyber warfare teams or whatever. You don't announce it. That's gray zone warfare. You don't talk about it. You don't discuss the fact that we're putting our troops, cyber warfare troops, into their country. It's just insane. So we're literally almost guaranteeing attribution from Russia at this point. When Ukraine, all those Ukrainian hackers, and they're not all in Ukraine. That's the thing, is the Ukrainian cyber warfare forces, they're actually spread out all around those countries: Poland, Belarus. So U.S., Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, they have cyber warfare teams that operate out of their country, and Ukraine does too. But a good portion of their cyber warfare teams, if you research this, they've kind of splintered off, and they've got all these little groups all throughout the Eastern Bloc, so that can operate with immunity, and they're technically not part of Ukraine, but they get their marching orders for Ukraine. So this thing could get really bad. And to say it couldn't happen, one of those little tiny groups took out the railway lines in Belarus 4 days ago because Russia's sending their heavy hardware by rail through Belarus. Well, one of these Russian hacking or Ukrainian hacking groups took down the railway computers and kind of put a faux pas on that for 3 or 4 days, to kind of slow down the Russian buttressing. So this stuff's coming. It's just how it is.
Somebody asked when, how soon. You got any estimates on that? I mean,
I do. So you're getting an estimate from a dude on the internet, so take it with a grain of salt. But here's my prediction. I think Putin's ready to go at any minute. And a lot of the military analysts that you're seeing, they're saying, oh, he's going to go this week, next week, within the next 2 weeks. Here's the thing. One of the big things that we haven't been talking about, and I think you probably talked about with Pry, because me and him talked about it the week before that, is we should be building an alliance with Russia. Okay, we should have been bringing them into the fold. We should be playing nice with them. We should be building an alliance with them. This whole, punch with Russia, all it's doing, it's pushing it into the loving arms of China. Russia and China for the last year have been having military exercises together. They're doing their space program together. The comms, the secret military comms together. China came out last week and said that if NATO puts all these advanced sanctions on Russia, China said they're going to bail them out, help them out through those sanctions, and give them supplies and stuff. So we're seeing the Sino-Russian alliance build, and it's building really, really fast. And both of those countries, I'm sorry, their advanced military weaponry is more advanced than ours. Okay, put this in perspective. North Korea successfully test fired a hypersonic missile the other day. We haven't even figured that out yet. Freaking the Hermit Kingdoms putting out, advanced weapons from China faster than we can put them out. But anyways, so prediction time, Bryce. Sorry. Okay, reel back in. Okay, I'm back. So I think what's happening here and what's the reason Putin hasn't gone in is I think China wants to go into Taiwan, and I think they want to do it together, right? I think there's some backdoor talks with Putin and the president from China, and what's happening over the next 3 weeks? The Olympics in China. I think the president of China said, Putin, you know, Vladimir, just cool down. Let us get through these Olympics. All this money, this prestige, and all the TV cameras and all this stuff happening. I don't think he wants Putin to rain on his parade. I think the day after the Olympics, not the day after, but I think shortly after the Olympics end, I think there's a good chance that Russia will invade Ukraine. And I think probably within a couple of days or a week later, China's going to invade Taiwan. We can't defeat either of those countries alone, but we're sure as heck not going to take them on simultaneously. That's my prediction, which isn't worth a grain of salt, but that's my prediction.
Let me amplify on that a little bit. There's a good reason for China not to move on Taiwan during the Winter Olympics. They have nothing to do with the Winter Olympics. It's got to do with winter. It's got to do with sea states. The sea states in the Strait of Taiwan are still very turbulent. They want good sea states to mount their amphibious craft and all their personnel in. And so they need to wait a little bit later. Russia needs to roll while there's still frozen ground in Ukraine. So they're probably going to try to find some happy medium time in between. By the end of February, that it's getting real dicey in Ukraine. So they got to probably move pretty fast about the time the Olympic Games is over. That might be a good time for China to start their softening military exercises where you like your bombing, shooting missiles. You've got bombers, aircraft attacking, but not boots on the ground. But as soon as the seas die down, they can put their guys across the strait at that point. But the target's already softened up in military parlance. I mean, they've been hit hard. So it might be that they've got a confluence right there where they can find a happy medium where we're distracted on two fronts at once. I'm sure they both would like that if they are going to, in fact, move in. Let's hope they reconsider and have other reasons not to. Maybe knowing that Ukraine would hit them back with cyber attacks will make Russia think twice. Maybe knowing what all those javelins would do would make them, sure, Russia could take it, but at what cost, and can they hold it? Hopefully there's enough things that give second thoughts and make them ponder enough to not pull these things off. Let's hope and pray that they don't happen. The problem is that, when you see the Russians running blood banks up to the battlefront lines, you got to think that they're beginning to think seriously. They're talking one way, but it's like somebody with body language. The words are saying one thing, but they're making moves like they're about to strike you. The body and the mouth are saying two different things. So we've got to be very careful here, guys. I think we're in dangerous territory, and let's just hope and pray the worst don't happen. But you better prep like it will, because the chances are real high. I've asked David Pine, who was on a show with me last week, what he thought the real probability of us getting in conflict with Russia over it. I didn't say ask him what was the probability of Russia going into Ukraine. I asked him what was the probability of the United States getting into a war with Russia over all this, and he said 80%. He thought it was 80%. So that is extremely significant, people. That is scary. Let's hope he's wrong, but 80%, and he's not the only person I've heard say that. I've seen that published elsewhere. So some people are really thinking that's where we're at. Let's hope it's not, but 80%, guys, even if it's just the EMP Attack response, that's an 80% probability that only 20% of us will survive, 10% of us will survive, according to that, coupled with the EMP Congressional Task Force estimates, which I think are optimistic. So we are looking at very dangerous times ahead. This is the time to prep and pray. Seriously, prep and pray, big time. Oh yeah, hey, I want to thank Brian Perendi for giving me a super chat earlier on the channel here. I meant to get around to that, but we've got to be prepping and praying very seriously right now, everyone, and get all your affairs in order. Also, there was somebody, what did he say here? Now somebody's saying, well, what's the chances all this is just the USA dark government playing games? Well, there were people talking.
You're giving them too much credit.
Yeah, well,
So-
they did say that if anything goes down, they want to blame it all on the other side. But
Yeah. I get the Bilderbergs, the Rothschilds, and I'm not saying there's nothing to any of that, but
now let's be careful.
everything's in inside jobs, everything's a black flag. And yes, no, maybe, but at the end of the day, like, we're talking about people who can't figure out how to tie their shoes half the time. Like, are we going to really give them that much credit that there's this big master plan? Maybe there is, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think I'd rather ascribe incompetence and power and money over some secret master plan that's happened behind the scenes. But I know I'm probably in the minority on that, but that's just me personally, I like to focus on things that I can,
they're actionable things
that I can wrap my hands around. Right. You can go down some rabbit trails on YouTube. And I did that many years ago. And I realized that half these guys are just making this stuff up. But some of it's true, some of it's not. The thing is which stuff's true, which stuff's not. Like, should we be stocking up for silver bullets for the Nephilim? And I mean, how far do you take this stuff? Right. So focus on the things that you control, and the stuff, if Sasquatch comes out when the time comes, deal with it at that time. But, focus on the things that are real legitimate threats. But anyways,
hey, don't malign my friend Sasquatch. He gets a lot of bad PR, guys.
He does. He's super nice. You ever see Harry and the Hendersons? That old 90s movie? Oh, I haven't seen that forever.
We probably went a little too far down that rabbit hole. May get us some trouble on this platform.
It might.
I was just supposed to be an aside there, but I shouldn't have even brought it up. So yeah, we get in trouble talking about some things like that, and we're not. This platform is not a free speech platform. I wrote a little song I sung last time. I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but I might quote a couple of things in here that we have more control than you might think. And I think the Canadian truckers are showing us this.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a couple of verses. I'm just going to read it. So, and one of them is, you can bring down the controller's reign when you can take away their supply chain. And because there can be no world order when they can no longer order. So if we're worried about them, they're susceptible to the same stuff as everybody else. They've got to have their own supply chains. They got to have the system working. They got to be able to order things. And as I've often said, there's more of us than there is of them. So just keep that in mind if we ever get in a situation like that. And if you ever find yourself being hurt with a bunch of people being herded into a cattle car, a train car by somebody with a pointy bang bang, I would say all of you need to rush him, even though all you got is your fingers and your knuckles. If you all rush him, he will take out a bunch of you, but some of you will survive and he will go down. If you go into the cattle cart, none of you will survive, maybe. So do not go into the cattle car.
Yeah, fight to your dying breath. I hear so much like, oh, if this happens, I just know I'm not going to survive, or, I'm not going to prepare for that because it's really, really hard and tough to think about. And, I'm just going to go ahead and die. It's like, yeah, you say that now, and maybe you will put a bullet in your mouth, but, are you a parent? Are you a grandparent? Okay. Come on, like I hear that so much, but when it comes down to it, I think it's going to just really suck for you. You know what I mean? Because you didn't make any preparations. And so let me leave last tidbit before we go here. Everybody wants they want a 10-step action plan. They want to be told, okay, what is the answer? Blah, 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 blah. Lay it out to me plain and clear. Okay. So here's the thing. I worked with over 500 clients over the continental United States, analyzing survival retreats and their survival plans, extraction plans, bug out plans, the whole 9 yards, right? Every single client that I've ever worked with had completely different issues to overcome. They had different budgets, different family size, different weather conditions, different every piece of advice that I give to a client is completely different from one client to another. You can't bottle that up in the top 10 things. And I know that those are the videos that get all the views and all the followings. If you get nothing else, here's the thing. Before you go out and cash in your kids' college fund, so fear monger, we're trying to make people aware. And I realize this subject is scary, and I realize that we're coming across really strong. But don't panic. Don't cash in your kids' college fund. Take it as you can, a little bit at a time. But at the end of the day, before you spend a dime, I tell people this all the time, come up with a plan. Come up with a viable plan before you start spending money. It's kind of like that old, in the 80s, they had those, whatever they were, the infomercials late at night where you'd be sitting there being like, I need that. You're sitting there with Cheeto dust on your t-shirt and you call in, you order something you don't need. The same thing is true in this industry. They're going to sell you the greatest whiz bang gadget that'll protect your whole house and everything in it from take a breath. Come up with a plan. Say, am I actually going to stay home? Why would I protect my home in the city here? It doesn't make any sense. I need to be protecting. I need to buy one of these devices for Uncle Timmy's farm, right? So think, process this information. And you probably need a lot less guns and ammunition than you probably already have. Focus more on food and water. Get a big Berkey, a couple of them. Make sure you buy food. Greg's, long-term food stuff, 2,000 calories a day. That's unheard of. If you go out there and you buy one of these off-the-shelf companies that give me 800 calories a day, that's a starvation diet. Most of those 1-year food plans that you're going to buy actually have about 3 or 4 months of food in them. So pay attention to who you're listening to. As always, I'll leave everybody with my company model: prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And, let God do the rest. And I'm going to plug my stuff if you're fine with that, Allison.
Good. Go for it. Tell us what
All
you
right.
got there. And you got to
you
tell me all of your data that you want me to post on this video in the show notes.
Okay. So my website's griddownconsulting.com. I have a book called Survival Theory, a Preparedness Guide. It was a #1 bestseller on Amazon, Survival and Preparedness, for about 4 months here. It's a little bit outdated. I'm hoping to come out with Survival Theory 2 soon. I have a top 10 best-selling EMP series called EMP Equipping Modern Patriots. And trying to think what else. If you want to follow me on Instagram, or Twitter, it's @GridDownPrepper. I don't run that stuff. I have somebody else run it for me, so I'm trying to remember. I'm on it sometimes, but usually if I've had to take a step back from social media and let somebody else run it. Facebook, I think it's @GridDownPrepper or Jonathan Hollerman, if I remember correctly. But I wish everybody the best. Here's the thing. We're entering dark days. I mentioned earlier, we live in a post-truth world. You can't watch the news. You can't listen to the news. You don't know what to believe. You don't know who to believe. Yeah, you're getting, it's just both sides are fighting with each other. They're designed to divide our country, divide us by our ethnic backgrounds, divide us by our political backgrounds. They're dividing us so they can conquer us. And it's all about votes and election. And pay attention to where you're getting information from. Pay attention to who you're listening to. These are scary times that we're entering, but at the end of the day, there is one solid rock that you can trust in, and that's Jesus Christ. And I would recommend that you plan to take a Bible with you, and even if it's not something that you are into today. He can give you the hope and the peace. I sleep like a baby every night. People ask me, like, how do you know all this stuff that you're covering? At the end of the day, I'm going to live. I'm not. If I die, I'm going to end up in a better place shortly after. So, yeah.
Well, John, I do everything to prep. I prep. I've been prepping before we even called it prepping. We just called it survivalism, or just good smarts. I've been in this for a long time, and and I have a pretty good idea of the threat matrix, the things that we face, and it don't look pretty right now. But at the same time, I'm going to stop and smell the roses along the way. You'll see me laughing and cutting up, because you still got to live. You can't lose your perspective. You got to be human. And if you lose your humanity, you've lost everything. We got to stay human, people. We've got to keep our lives. We got to keep our family, and always make sure you do tell everyone in your family you love them, because you never know for any reason what'll be the last chance you might get to do that. You know, I could have been taken out by an auto accident back in April when I got reared in by a big transfer truck that sent me propelling into a light pole. That was quite a bargain. I got 2 collisions for the price of 1. I mean, you don't often get good deals like that. Except for going to preparedness.com with the discounts I got right now. But you just never know what's allotted to you in time. So make the best of what you got. And, you know, and that's all you can do at any time. You can only make the best of what you got with what you got to do with. I mean, work at it, prep at it, keep working at it, practice things, do what you can do. But if you can't do it, don't sweat it, because you're doing the best you can. That's all you can do. Do the best you can, and just hope for the best beyond that. You know, we got to form up teams and groups, and I'm going to be working some more. You know, I got people that want to form tribes. I got to talk with Wise Owl in there. She's going to help me out. I've got to get some more volunteers to work our tribe network for contacting folks. But we're definitely I've got some big lists for people that we got to pull in and start the tribe organization thing, because we got to not be lone wolves. So we are working that. Now we do have a couple local groups meeting here, and I'll be speaking with one of them on the 12th of February. In fact, the guy that organized that was actually in the chat room tonight. I don't see him now, but I actually met with him and another local prepper last night. So we're into this stuff, guys. We're in rough times, but you can only do so much. And I have heard we got Jin Jimin in here. That sounds almost like Jin Zemin, one of the previous Chinese presidents. So we've had
Might be.
yeah, maybe he's in here. He's about 95-year old right now, by the way. Jin Zemin. You know, he's actually pretty much got the kind of a counter Xi Jinping movement within the CCP in China, but he's still communist, by the way. So don't get too much hope in him. So just for everybody to know. But I've heard preppers say, don't panic now. I'll tell you when to panic. I tell my followers, don't ever panic, because when you lose your head, you might actually lose your head. So you've got to have, if things are coming at you, if you're about to be in a fight, if you panic, you're not smart. The most powerful weapon system on earth is between your ears, and it don't work if you short circuit it with panic. You better be able to think your way through things as best as you can. I know that may be hard to do when the hormones are surging in you and your heart is going like a freight train. So it helps if you preconceive some of these things and just think about the things you have to deal with. Because so a lot of your prepping is mental. It's
Yes.
really mental. A lot of your prepping is mental, because otherwise you might be caught like a deer in the headlights. You might go catatonic. You might be in shock, just sitting there staring at what's coming at you. And if it's somebody that's wanting to eat you, you're probably going to be their dinner treat. Don't be their dinner treat. Don't be the long pork. Keep your head on your shoulders in more ways than one. So try your best not to panic anytime. Now, it don't mean that you shouldn't get the heck out of Dodge and do so pronto. Sometimes a fast retreat is the best thing. It might look like a panic, but sometimes you got to get the heck out of them. But, you know, just remember, running from a bear ain't going to get you nowhere, because he's going to outrun you. There's some things that are futile. Climbing a tree to escape a bear is also not especially wise. Now, if you can pick up a limb and make the bear think you're bigger and yell and holler, so deception has a lot to do too with perception, and perception is everything, often in combat and other things. So just keep these things in mind. And you know, it's just like a dog. If he's running at you, most of the time, if you run at it, it's going to turn tail and run. Unless it's a trained attack dog, then you're in trouble. But that's never run from a predator, by the way. Just good advice if you're in the woods. Never ever run from a predator, because as soon as you do, you're prey, and it makes it want to go after you. So I'm going to go live again later tonight at some point. I got to have a little bit of a break. I got to process this stuff and get all your notes put in here, and a few other things to do. But I will go. A bear can swim too. You're right, Dragon, especially polar bears. And just to show you that humor is important, Jonathan, what does one polar bear say to another about an igloo? Anybody in the chat room is free to answer that if you know what the answer is. What's one polar bear say to another about an igloo?
Is that the cream-filled one?
You're right. Oh, these are great. They're crunchy on the outside and chewy on the inside.
There you go. I've heard, yeah, it's been a while.
You were close. You were close. Yeah, that's about the way it goes. So,
right.
And never forget, there's always a silver lining around every mushroom cloud. So there's you some doomsday humor. So yeah, we got to have perspective, and sometimes it might be a little macabre. But that's why, you know, guys like the 82nd Airborne sing things like "Blood on the Risers." You know, sometimes you just got to have your attitude set to deal with what you got coming at you. And it may seem gruesome, and it is, but you know, sometimes that's what gets you through. So just be mentally prepped. But the big part of that is being right with your maker, and that's what Jonathan was talking about. So,
that's right.
All right, I think we've said enough for tonight. We've been going now for a little over 2 hours, and we still got 217 people in the room. That's good. I assume we may have had over 1,000 over the course of these 2 hours. You know, the people kind of cycle through. A lot of people do. I just want to thank you, John, for coming on here and for sharing your time and knowledge with everybody. I try to bring people the truth. I try to bring the best guests in the West, the best there are on my channel to talk to you, to bring you the truth about what's going on. And it may not be the popular story. It may not be the mainline story. It may disagree with all the stuff that you hear generally. And I will come out and I will attack things that I don't agree with. A lot of times other people put out there, but I'm trying to bring you what it is. These other channels are usually, even if we're smaller, they get zillions more views for some reason. And I don't know who else is bringing guests on like I do here, but we're really trying to help the viewers. So please share. Maybe the algorithms are really stepping on my channel. So please try to share my videos wide. If you've not given a thumbs up, please give a thumbs up. I still got 268 now. That's appreciated. What's the best generator? Somebody asking here. Wow, that's a good question. Probably an old reliable one like a Briggs and Stratton. I don't know, what do you, or a solar would be better than anything, because generators are kind of like rifles. They all report where you're at. I'm here. Those are tend to be loud. If you had one that's quiet, maybe a propane or something, that might be better. What do you think about that real quick, Jonathan? That's maybe our final question for the day.
Generator? Is that what you're asking about? That's a really loaded question, because the first thing I want to know is budget, size. What are you generating?
Right.
So my first step is going to be towards a dual fuel generator, something that will work off propane. Diesel is great, but at some point you're going to run out of diesel. Propane you can store forever. Diesel you can store for a long time. Propane, you get large enough tanks, you can bury them underground. And then also, if you needed to resupply at the last minute, the day after an event, your chances of going to a propane refueling facility and getting propane is a lot higher than showing up at a gas station the day or two after and getting diesel fuel for your generator, extra diesel fuel, because you were lower than you thought you were. I would look at old military surplus generators, easily used ones. But again, it depends on your scenario. I mean, if it's something that needs to be a backup for a solar panel system, that's unfortunately, we're gonna need another 2-hour call here to cover that topic.
Yeah, somebody and I got a good answer that from Green Country Agroforestry. He said, "What do you need a generator for?" In the end, they're all going to break down. They
make a lot of noise.
Yeah, they're going to make a lot of noise and tell everybody where you're at, which is going to be bad. And solar might be better from that standpoint, but they're all going to break down eventually, and you're going to run out of fuel probably before it breaks down.
Yeah.
You might be able to make biodiesel. You might be able to make some wood gas to keep you going for a little while, but that comes at great expense of time. But like I said, eventually you're just the pull cords are going to break. One thing after another is going to go. I just bought a dual fuel generator and had it in the box and never used it. I broke it out a couple of weeks ago and the thing don't work, brand new. So I got to
Well, everything today is made to break. You know that. I mean, you buy something, it's got a 2-year shelf life. Even Honda's not making them as good as they used to. So yeah, it depends on what you can afford to spend. And I would need a lot more data points to make an official recommendation.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So it's yeah, I think that the ultimate question is, why do you need it? What do you need it for? You guys need to start planning for how to live without any of these things. You need to figure out how to live without any power, without any comms. The old way, like the people that were in the 1700s and 1800s, how did they get by? How did they survive? You need to start wrapping your brains around that, and just get ready, because eventually you're going to have to go back to such things. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up to you. All right, I think we've done enough for one night here. We've gone long, and again, I really want to thank you very much for coming in here, John. And we got plenty we could talk about in the future, whether it's generators or just talking about the other things preppers mislead people on. I think that's a whole topic in and of itself. We did a pretty good hit on that tonight.
I think I've stepped on a few toes at least.
Well, I've stepped on some toes before too. So, and sometimes I even name them by name. And so that's some of the stuff that happens. But anyway, John, thank you very much. I want to thank, once again, we only got one super chat tonight, and that came from Brian Perendi. Thank you for that. We've gone long here. I want to thank Mods. You've been busy tonight. I've seen you've been doing a lot of activity. And I want to thank everybody for coming here and watching. Everyone who's been part of this, came in here and watched tonight. Appreciate you being here. Take this stuff home, these ideas home, and just know to get ready and share my videos far and wide. We really need to get these words out, folks, because I try to put the best truth I can get out here to everyone. So do share them far and wide, and do also take care of yourself. Take care of your family. That's number one. Mm-hmm. All right, I will be live later tonight at some point. Good Lord willing, if I don't fall over, stand on my feet to sleep. So that's the plan. Be live later, just for an open chat for y'all to come in here and just ask me whatever. We used to talk about weather and things like that. We got some crazy weather coming at us. So again, John, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for being here. And with that, I am